So calling the meeting to order at 7:02. Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Nobis, Commissioner Dillard,
Here.
Commissioner Krebs,
Here.
Commissioner Merritt,
Here.
Commissioner Simmons,
Here.
and Commissioner Tassinari.
Here.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we'll move on to the reading of the Native American Land Acknowledgement.
We meet today in the community of Iowa City, which now occupies the homelands of Native American nations to whom we owe our commitment and dedication. The area of Iowa City was within the homelands of the Iowa, Meskwaki, and Sauk, and because history is complex and time goes far back beyond memory, we also acknowledge the ancient connections of many other indigenous peoples here. The history of broken treaties and forced removal that dispossess indigenous peoples of their homelands was and is an act of colonization and genocide that we cannot erase. We implore the Iowa City community to commit to understanding and addressing these injustices as we work together, or to work toward equity, restoration, and reparations.
Thank you, Commissioner Merritt. Next, we normally would move to approval of meeting minutes, but I'm going to move that we do that the next meeting. We'll approve 2 meeting minutes. So next will be public comment. Is there anyone that would like to give public comment online about anything not on the agenda? Please raise your hand. Okay, anyone in the room that would like to give public comment on anything not on the agenda? Okay.
Just an invitation to our South of 6 Business District. It's September 23rd, 12 to 2. It's a community input session. It's open to everyone. As we develop our business, our thriving business hub near a neighborhood, we really want to make sure that we're informed by the neighborhood, and that includes not just the residents closest, but those throughout the community. So you all are invited, and anybody else that hears is too. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is our commission bylaws. This is an agenda item that we talked about a little bit last time, but moved to talk more this time. So if there are any commissioners that would like to start off with any discussion before we move forward. I don't see anyone raising their hands or jumping to. I trust that everyone had enough time to look over it in the last 2 weeks. And if there's nothing, I think we might move to decide if we're going to pass it. So I would need someone to motion that.
Well, I have a question about, there's comments. Are we in agreement? And some of the comments, I'm not sure if we, include among functions. I don't know if these are,
So I believe, Stephanie, the blue are from Eduardo, correct? And the red is from the city.
Correct.
And the city came after Eduardo's. So we would be in agreement of taking all the suggestions from Eduardo and taking away anything the city did not agree with if we go along with this document.
I move that we accept the bylaws.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I believe we have a facilitator that would like to jump in discussion before we move to the vote.
Thank you. VFX Rise, SD Planning. I just wanted to put out there, there has been discussion amongst the facilitation team and some city staff as to how to help facilitate truth-telling sessions. And I know that that's kind of a lot of what the bylaws are really trying to get at is, how is it possible for, folks to do some truth-telling and, be in public sessions and things like that. And so just wanted to let you know that that conversation is ongoing, and we are still working with the city to see what are some ways to help facilitate those spaces. So I just wanted to put that out there as you're thinking of approving the minutes.
The bylaws.
bylaws.
I'm sorry, the bylaws. I don't know what I was talking. I said, bylaws. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I'm not sure if it has any direct bearing on you passing those bylaws tonight, but just trying to be transparent with the fact that we're still trying to find ways, even though I know the city attorney's comments are here, and I'm not trying to go against those comments. We're still hoping to have a conversation with him as well, so.
Thank you, V. I know that Commissioner Novus raised her hand for probably a question to you. So if you want to talk, Sakowis? We can't hear you if you are talking.
Yeah, sorry, I was just having trouble getting off mute. No, I just wanted to respond to my comment that was suppressed in membership, Article 4. I know that I'm not going to win this one, but I just want to state that I still believe that people with lived experiences should be members of this commission, but it's being suppressed. So I'm just saying I just want to put that out there on the record that I'm against that, but I will vote for this.
Commissioner Novus, can you cite what you were referencing so I can look at it, please?
It's under membership, Article 4, under membership. I had said that at our meeting like last time I was there.
So it's possible that the version that Eduardo added comments to was not the revised version that was done in the meeting, is what I'm thinking happened there. And so,
Aren't the blue comments the city's comments?
no, the blue comments are Eduardo's. The city attorneys are in red.
Oh, so if the city attorney didn't suppress my comment, then that's awesome. Can we keep that in there?
That's the plan.
So you're saying, because Eduardo is suggesting that we suppress also with lived experience and change it to as well, or adding as well as experts who support those communities?
I'm saying as well as experts who support those communities also with lived experiences.
Which is the edited version from the meeting where we first looked at the bylaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so Eduardo suppressed it, but the city attorney didn't, so I would like to keep that in there.
I'm fine with that unless someone has an issue with that.
Well, I'm just not sure exactly what that means. So if we could articulate that.
I mean, people with lived experiences of dealing with racism.
I know, but how do we assess that to say who has it and who doesn't?
Because they're somebody that's had a lived experience dealing with racism, which is pretty obvious, I would think.
I would say that if someone comes to us and says they have a lived experience with racism, we cannot tell them that they have not. So that could encompass anyone who has a lived experience. I think that language is also in line with what the resolution that was first created says, if that answers your question.
It does sort of. It's just that I have a feeling that the reason Eduardo wanted it removed is that it is a bit difficult to assess, and I could imagine situations where that could lead to contentious discussions as to what does or does not constitute that kind of experience. But, I mean, I'll go along with whatever the entire commission wants to go along with, but that's what I think he's about. That's why he's saying that, I believe.
Thank you for making that point. I wish Eduardo was here I don't think he's online, or anyone from Think Peace, correct? To clarify that. Sakowis, you still have your hand raised. Would you like to say anything else?
No, sorry, I didn't realize that.
Okay, no problem. Veed?
Yeah, I think that actually reading this, it's just in addition to. It's not actually like striking that line. I think it's as well as,
Okay.
as Sakowis had read.
Okay, so it's keeping in what was originally there and then adding as well as who support those communities. So that would, does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other discussion points for this before we move into the vote?
I just want to comment to V. You were talking about, so the part where the city is suggesting about deleting about the whole closed session language. Is that the one of the things you're talking?
Yeah, and I think that we're, still trying to work out, like I said, how we can do that, and recognizing that, we're not trying to ask the city to do anything illegal. And certainly this has been done in, country settings and city settings, and other settings. So that we're just trying to figure out creatively how to make this happen.
Yeah, because I was going to say that even if we go on and approve this, with this being removed because of what the city said, we can always, once the language has been,
Right.
Amended.
yeah, we can go on and amend the bylaws to include whatever it is. I would like to include that as an option, because there should be
Yeah.
that as an option.
And that's correct, Stephanie, that we can amend afterwards.
Yeah.
My question to you, V, is from a facilitator standpoint, what is your suggestion? Should we wait on this, or should we pass?
No,
Or-
I think it's fine to pass it. I just didn't want you all to think that this was over. That I think that we still need to continually look for creative solutions and work, obviously closely with city staff on that. So, yeah, just wanted to put that out there, that we're still trying to figure that out too.
Okay, well, I thank our facilitators and city staff for working to get this document to us. If there's no other questions, I think we should move on to the vote.
Commissioner Nobis,
Yes.
Commissioner Dillard,
Yes.
Commissioner Krebs.
Yeah, I have a question. Are we voting
Hey.
to keep it with the suppression to Article 4, or are we passing it with the lived experience piece?
So we,
Yeah, I just realized that.
we just discussed that it's not, they're both on there. So it's with lived experiences and
So we
those.
will keep that
both.
instead of suppressing?
Yes.
Okay.
That is what I'm hearing from everyone.
Okay, I just want to make sure what I'm voting on, I would vote yes for that.
Me too, my vote's still yes, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Merritt,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
and Commissioner Tassinari.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to move to public comments. If there's anyone that'd like to publicly comment on this agenda item, first we'll go online. If there's anyone online, please raise your hand. While we're waiting online, if there's anyone in the room with us that would like to talk about this agenda item, please come to the podium. All right, thank you very much. We are going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is the Better Together 2030 plan. This stems from a conversation that started with Commissioner Nobis and Commissioner Simmons talking about the Better Together plan. So we invited Executive Director Katie Gerlich to come speak about it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Let's get this up. Stephanie and I are going to co-present this PowerPoint, so give us a minute here. All right, let me test the clicker.
Oh, I never thought about you having to be closer to it.
That's okay, I'll just point at you.
Okay.
Okay, so, is that okay if I just say?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name's Katie Gerlach. I'm the director of Better Together 2030. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that organization as well as the All in Vision plan today. So Better Together is a community development corporation. That means we're a 501c3 nonprofit that's been formed to help implement the community plan, the All in Vision plan, which is supported by these community sponsors. All of our municipalities, the area community and economic development agencies, and these were the plan sponsors of the original plan. And since that date, we've now added an additional partner with South of 6. Next one. Better Together came out of the pandemic, so some of you might have heard of Project Better Together, and that was the region's response to the pandemic. And we were able to build a lot of consensus and partnership as part of that, and so we worked together to respond to immediate needs for healthcare supplies, adopt a healthcare worker, local shopping, and we were able to build trust locally that hadn't been built before amongst community partners, municipalities, and organizations. So we used that trust to start the Better Together futurist process. So we hired a futurist, which is a real job, and we undertook building on that success and built out a steering committee of community members across different demographics, different organizations, and we went through what's called the foresight process. We had 3 tri-chairs leading us: Angie Jordan, Barb Wilson, it was her first act as UI president, and Kate Moreland of the Iowa City Area Development Group. We had over 32 steering committee members, those 3 tri-chairs. We analyzed over 36 trends that were affecting our community in the coming years. We had a big sort where we took those trends and analyzed those based on their certainty of happening, as well as how impactful they would be on our community. We then tested that with a community survey called the All Our Ideas Survey, and we had over 15,000 votes cast in that by over 560 community members. We then checked our work, which I think was an important part of the process, because we wanted to make sure throughout that we were including people whose voices traditionally had not been at the decision-making table or a strategic planning process table. And we took that through the community circle process and had 3 circle keepers. Banjo Knits Empowerment ran those circles for us, and we were able to really check and make sure that we were on the right track with those items and pillars that we were identifying. Next one. This is one of my favorite pages of the plan, and I hope you can find that on our website, bettertogether.org, bt2030.org. And it shows that our community knows how to do really challenging and hard things. We've been leading the nation and the world in many things since, gosh, this first page is 1839, but I think even before that. And so this is kind of an exciting timeline, I think, that shows that we're able to do hard things when we work together and we collaborate. Next. So what came out of that process was the 2030 vision. You have these cards in front of you so you can follow along of what these 5 pillars are. Do they yet? Oh, Angie's going to bring them up for you. Angie's on our board of directors, so I'm putting her to work tonight. We have 5 pillars that emerged, and I can do a presentation about those 5 pillars in no less than 85 slides. So what I've done is a YouTube video that you can see that kind of gives you a good overview, and that'll be up next. The video will highlight the 5 pillars, as well as our guiding principles of how we intend our community to do this work. And these are the things that we've all agreed upon together, and that our cities, our community organizations, and economic development organizations have all agreed to. And I think it's on Chrome. Yeah. Perfect.
The All-In Vision Plan is essentially the first vision and strategic plan that we have for the community. It's our North Star guiding all of our work collectively. It involved many stakeholders across the community. And it's a plan. It's a plan of action and a dynamic plan for making this really the best place to live, work, and learn.
So throughout the vision process, we recognized that there was a way that we wanted to do this work that felt and looked different. We know we need representative leadership. It's incredibly important that we have all voices at the table and an opportunity for leadership throughout our community. We know we need a growth mindset to be able to think beyond today and create the future for the next several generations. Being able to leverage the assets from different parts of our community, different organizations, to be able to put assets together differently, to be able to advance and solve big problems. It really is about solving problems, about thinking big and working together.
The floods of '93 and 2008 caused us to turn our backs on the Iowa River. That is about to change. 12 miles from the Coralville Reservoir Dam to the south edge of Iowa City, while healthily maintained, were largely ignored. A community that loves outdoor recreation, as evidenced by the hundreds of miles of trails in Johnson County, has not embraced the beauty of the winding river that cuts through its own heart. The Iowa River will become a transformational gathering spot for residents and visitors alike. They'll get to experience the river directly through canoe, kayak, paddleboard, and paddleboat rentals. Participate in the river's care and maintenance through volunteer and civic efforts. and enjoy the river as a setting for dynamic community events like riverfront art, music, and cultural gatherings. The BT 2030 vision work will deepen partnerships between the University of Iowa and regional stakeholders to develop and execute sustainable environmental practices and clean and renewable energy.
We believe that good neighbors build great neighborhoods, and great neighborhoods make for a more connected and resilient community. We have to move beyond this idea that you have to come to the rec center, or you have to come to the library, or you have to come to city council meetings to engage with your city. Now, with over the past couple of years, we've really focused on bringing rec programming into the parks. We've focused on bringing the summer reading program into the neighborhoods. We focus on making sure we have elected officials at events where people can run into them and interact with them. We have events like a playground crawl. We're highlighting existing amenities, but we're building these connections between these neighborhoods and having people explore them. Your neighborhood can be beyond a couple blocks in a town. It can be the whole town if you just shift your perspective. Inviting everyone to the table and really listening and investing in the time of what people want to do. It's not one meeting and you're done. I mean, this is a long game. You're getting to know the people that are really outgoing and coming up to you, and then you're also, really building the relationships with folks that aren't calling the city normally.
A well-connected mobile region is so important because we know that people in Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, and all the towns in Johnson County live, work, and play everywhere. You don't just stay in the place where your bed is at night. You don't just stay where your office is. And so we have to be able to move people and information effectively from place to place. People need to be connected by transportation in a lot of different modes. We want people to be able to walk, bike, take the bus, maybe take a train, as well as rely on their cars, but hopefully less and less. Increasing mobility between our communities will help with equity and access for everyone. Because if everybody has the chance to get from place to place and to share information quickly and freely, we know that will lift everyone up.
Anything that you're doing that's going to affect everyone really needs to include everyone, and not just at the end or in the middle, but from the very beginning, so that you can get all these different perspectives, but you can also start building relationships that you're going to need once plans get made to actually do action with the folks that are included. Inclusive economic development to me means bringing folks together in safe spaces that we can replicate over and over. And I think what's really special about the South District SMID is that it was dreamed up and it was spearheaded by the residents and the neighborhood that wanted and believed they need a thriving business district, a cohesive, inclusive, representative business district to have the neighborhood be resilient and sustainable.
When we think about the work that we did collectively during the pandemic, one of the amazing things that happened was we all came together with this mindset of saying yes. And it really allowed us to see partnerships, cross collaborations, and how we could maybe imagine delivering services in a new way. And so the possibilities of how we design the future based on that feedback is really exciting. One of the things about the Better Together 2030 work that I'm so excited about is this idea that if we use data and we use the information that we know about the needs of Johnson County, what is possible for the future? If we were all pointing at the same North Star to provide funding and support and research and learning and collaboration together, could we really make an impact, really what I call transformational change in that area?
As we came out of 2020, how do we get all this great collaboration going on? How do we continue that? How do we take a common crisis that bound us to having a common vision that binds us and continues that collaborative work moving forward. So the then came Better Together 2030.
We need to have radical candor, have difficult conversations so that we can get all of the issues out onto the table and we can start addressing them from a variety of different perspectives. There is no easy solution to any one of our problems, but it takes very complex and collaborative conversations to get to the solutions that are really the best.
So economic development has really changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and we need to adapt our strategies to solve for that. And what used to happen is we'd work to attract large business to come here so that the people would follow. And now we need to attract the people who bring new ideas, that create businesses, and then businesses want to be where the people are living. So it's really kind of reversed, and community development has become such a cornerstone of our work. And that is something we need to do with all of our partners, with all of our community leaders. It's really an all hands on deck effort to develop the type of community where people want to be, businesses want to be, and everyone can thrive.
That's a brief overview of the pillars that came out and explanation of these. But the most important thing I would say about the Better Together All in Vision and the Better Together work is that it's not about any one person or any one organization, but it's truly about collaboration and shifting the mindset of how we do work as a community and helping show business leaders, community leaders, municipal governments that we are better when we work together, but that we also have to have a growth mindset and we have to be willing to make mistakes and try again and try new things that maybe aren't proven or tested, but that we're willing to do this to help each other and move along. And so these are our guiding principles. We continue to raise projects up that will elevate representative leadership, collaboration among all partners, public, private, university, nonprofit, neighborhood, and just develop these innovative scaled solutions that can attack some of the largest challenges that our community faces. And also, like I mentioned, the growth mindset, so important. So these next slides I'll move through pretty quick, but I just want to give you a bit of an overview of where community members can plug in to the Better Together pillar and the work. So for Iowa City boards and commissions, particularly this commission, I think there's important opportunities here that I've highlighted. Next slide. We're working on 15-minute cities, making small cities for that you can access all of the things you need within 15 minutes of your home. So grocery, childcare, schooling, healthcare, all of the things that make your neighborhood accessible. We're working on showing this in a GIS mapping software so that people can learn and businesses can identify where they need to be to make these neighborhoods accessible. Next slide. Working on a 3D printed affordable housing project on the east side of Iowa City. Next. A childcare wage enhancement program with the city and the county to raise childcare workers' wages by $2 per hour without raising costs of tuition for parents. Next slide. There's a youth community leadership program forming. Next. We've been supportive of the Inclusive Economic Development Plan, which I'll let you learn more about from Bea later today. And so I do have a brief request for you while we're here, and that's if you review the plan as a commission, that you make a recommendation to the City Council, if you're able to do so, and the City of Iowa City, that they adopt the Inclusive Economic Development Plan formally as a municipality, and that you use your strength and credibility as the TRC to do so for other local municipalities. And that I also think it's important today that we talked about the Better Together All in Vision because it highlights all of these plans as a key opportunity for you to engage with community members, especially as you develop your framing questions for strategic doing. We've done a lot of outreach over the last year to help lay the groundwork for community members to understand these topics, the pillars and transformational. I think I've hit every Rotary Club, every city council, every civic group, a lot of boards and commissions where we've been invited and there's been opportunity to present. And I think there's a common language that we're all starting to use. And so I hope that it's helpful to you as you develop your framing questions. I also want to offer that if we can be helpful as you move forward through the TRC processes and strategic doing, I'd be really honored and happy to do so, and making sure that we invite people to the table. I've done so to make sure the Chamber of Commerce president will be invited and attend next week. You'll also invited the Community Foundation president, as well as United Way, and a representative from Better Together 2030 will be here next week as well. So please let us know how we can be helpful in helping shepherd these projects, and if a 501c3 community development corporation can be helpful as your strategic doing processes evolve. I think our greatest strength is that we are not a government entity, and so we can move outside of a lot of the hamstrings that you might have had as a commission, and so please let us know if we can help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions?
So thank you for the presentation.
Thanks for having me. Chad's probably seen this one 3 or 4 times, so. Although Angie might have the reference.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions from commissioners, again, I want to thank you so much for coming out and presenting, and I'm going to move on to our next agenda item. First, if there's anyone online or in the room that would like to make any public comment, now is the time. Okay, next we're going to move on to
I just want to say thank you for making the effort to come. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed you, Commissioner. Next, I'll invite V up to talk about the Inclusive Economic Development Plan. This is agenda item number 7.
Yes. Thank you all for asking me to talk about the Inclusive Economic Development Plan. This was, well, I'll let it speak for itself. It's quite a beast. Okay, so next slide. I just wanted to say this is my team that was working on it. We were also funded and collaborated with ICAT at the time, Hills Bank, Green State, the Multicultural Development Center of Iowa, and Iowa City Business Partnership. As well as you can see our community organizations that really were at the core of the work with Banjo and Its Empowerment, Center for Worker Justice, Colectivo de Mujeres en Negocios, Inside Out Reentry Community, and the South District Diversity Market Vendors. Next slide. So this was kind of a year-long, really it was a 2-year-long, it feels like, because it was kind of in COVID as well. But we realized that we needed to put together an inclusive economic development plan simply because, and Chad knows this because we were sitting at the same table at the chamber, that every time something came up about businesses that were people of color or immigrants, or, anytime there was like, oh, well, what about this growing population that we know is here? Everybody would just sort of put up their hands and say, well, we don't have any data. There's no state data on that. So we can't solve a problem we don't have data. And quite frankly, myself and others kind of got tired of that as an excuse. And so this was really meant to be, it's a plan, but it's also in large part a study, so that we can build upon it, so we kind of know what's in our community. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a first step. So I was really fortunate to be a part of the chamber at the time and then kind of hold some feet to the fire and say, well, then you need to help fund this. And so they did. Yeah, it kind of goes through the research that we did, and we did focus groups and things like that. Actually, if you could back up real quick, Stephanie. So we did surveys. We had surveys that were translated in several languages. We door knocked. We didn't just do it, online. We door knocked. We phone called. We had translators walking with us. We knew we needed to bridge the barriers, right? We didn't need people to necessarily come to us. We had to go to them. And also, we really leaned into our community partners that I had mentioned earlier to help us host focus groups that were low barrier, paying for childcare, making sure there's food, making sure there's transportation, and paying them for attending. And so we really did that because not only is it the right thing to do, because I get paid every time I go to a meeting, as my day job, that we wanted it to be the model for how to interact with what we call underestimated community members. And I'm pleased to say that a lot of people are now talking about underestimated community members and business owners, as opposed to just marginalized or underrepresented, particularly as we are the global majority. So yes, so that was about a year-long process that we went through. And then on to the strategic doing session is why it's really pertinent to what we're doing here, and I've mentioned it before, but you'll see kind of what came out of that. So through the focus groups and interviews, we had 4 different focus groups, and within those 4 focus groups, we had about 10 to 20 individuals. And I'll say that one of the more humbling experiences was that we worked with Mujeres de Colectivo de Negocios and had entirely Spanish-speaking focus group with them. And it was an incredible experience to have people really feeling comfortable in their own language and their own culture, sharing ideas and information, and being vulnerable. So that was key. All right, now to the next slide. Thank you. So I'm just going to give some highlights because it's a really dense study and plan. So next slide. We had about 105 total respondents, and we looked at existing business owners, emerging business owners, and then we also wanted to flip it a little and say, well, what about the support institutions? How do we hold you accountable? What information do you have that maybe you're just not sharing or you don't know that you have? So those are some of those demographics there. One thing that we tried to really be mindful of was the inclusive aspect of what we're doing. So instead of demographics just being like check a box, we actually just let people write in. And I think that that's why you see 25 different races and 29 ethnicities. People were freed from black, white, other, which I've literally had to fill out before. And so that then you get things culturally Jewish, Vietnamese, Northern European, Scottish. It's just to give us a sense of pride, but also like we kind of have a better understanding of who's in our community when it comes to business owners. Next slide.
Does that say American Indian?
Yeah, there's right next to between African American and white on the left-hand side. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
That should be changed.
Yeah. So we allowed people to write in, but yeah, thank you for pointing that
So I
out.
think someone wrote that in themselves.
Correct, yeah. Yep.
No, I understand that, but like, even if that's what's written in, like we should still try to, like even our own people sometimes, like we're using like language that like we should still be trying to like overcome. And so like, using the word Indian to describe American Indian is a very outdated language. It's not something we should be trying to use.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
I understand somebody wrote that in, but I'm just saying I'm just like bothered by that. So I just wanted to mention that. I mean, I know it's not a big deal. It's a small thing, but from my perspective, it's not okay.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think anybody's saying it's not a big deal. I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So we also were looking at educational experience because I think there's narratives around, immigrants or people of color as business owners don't have a lot of education or they didn't graduate high school or whatever mythologies people want to push on us. And here you can see that actually quite a vast majority have bachelor's degrees and even, master's and PhD degrees. And that also there's other education that's not being captured here. So just to dispel some of those mythologies. Next slide. One thing that was really striking, and I kind of knew this anecdotally, but then to see that rent costs were the most limiting, or the thing that people were paying for the most. So when you look at like say your house, you don't want to pay more than a third of your income for a house. Here we have somebody that's paying 79% of their income on rent. So to be, clear that it's not surprising because we're in Iowa City. I get that in Johnson County. It's very high costs, from 20 to 70%. It just puts a pin in what we already knew, right? What people are already telling us. So we wanted to highlight that. We also wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to write in, why they were inspired to have their own business. Again, the narrative and the mythologies around why people start businesses. Maybe people don't know. There's lack of representation. I wanted to do it for my own mental health. I wanted to have generational wealth for kids. You know, a lot of this is around community. You can see community, community, community again and again. So we wanted to make sure people felt like they could express why they wanted to have a business here. Another interesting aspect was where the financial the financial resources that businesses already knew about. So when you look at existing businesses and emerging businesses, you know, places like the chamber were like, well, how come existing businesses aren't utilizing us? Or are they, you know, thinking that they are utilizing them, when in fact, actually emerging businesses, maybe they should focus on that as opposed to existing businesses. So you're just kind of teasing out a little bit more of like, where do people feel like they can get resources? And this was very eye-opening to the business community. So that's just another highlight. Next slide. And then along with those financial resources, we wanted to make sure that we got the stories out. You know, why or how are people resourcing themselves? Well, they're selling their vehicles. They don't feel like they can go into banks. The loans are too small. You know, that gathered the capital with my own sweat and tears by working for someone else. You know, these are, again, those stories that we felt were very important to put out. Next slide. And of course, it comes down to the barriers for businesses. So really what it comes down to, again, is rental costs. Affordable business rental costs. And then again, looking at the physical location, access to money, and finding a desirable location. So really place-based. A lot of things are really place-based, which is interesting, especially in a kind of quote-unquote post-pandemic place where we have a lot of commercial space that is available. So this will come into some of our recommendations for city staff, city and county staff. One other thing that people wanted to know is, you know, are you helping our underestimated businesses already? And you can see that they don't have any policies or programs, that the support institutions like the banks, the municipalities, the counties, they didn't have anything in place. And what they did have were very new programs or policies that would support those. Now the banks are required to report some income, but it wasn't very helpful in terms of demographics that can be recorded. What about, you know, how do people feel in terms of economic opportunity? You know, you look at limited is really the thing that is striking. But what's another thing that's interesting is that 38% of Coralville respondents said that they were unsure. So also, when you're trying to open a business, you don't want to go someplace where you feel like you're unsure if there's going to be economic opportunities. And I think when you look at how people are feeling in terms of, can I go into City Hall to get the permit I need? Can I go into the bank to get the loan that I need? Those are some of those barriers that come into play. Just interesting to know where people get their information. This was, again, important for a lot of the business support institutions who were putting, you know, stuff on their website, 18%. You know, they're like, oh, we'll put it on our website. Well, nobody looks at that. I mean, we kind of knew that, but like, truly, 6% of people look at that. Whereas, you know, looking at, do I get my information from my family, from my friends, neighbors? Those are the things that really stood out. So really trying to show business support institutions, like you need to flip the model. You need to do something different if you really want to reach out to our communities. And then language being a barrier. I think Spanish is one of the most widely available translated documents, but when you look at actually census data, Mandarin and French, Spanish is third in terms of the most spoken language that's not English in Johnson County. So a lot of support institutions aren't providing that information. And then this was another interesting aspect was, you know, with COVID-19 pandemic funds that were coming through and we were getting millions and millions of dollars into our state, $50,000 was what was afforded to our 33 BIPAC-owned businesses here. And that's all we could really account for. And that's because a lot of people didn't know they qualified. They didn't know where to go. And a lot of those were like $2,000, $3,000, you know. So it just goes to show there's a lot more work we need to be doing in terms of making those relationships and reducing those barriers. So some of the solutions and opportunities that people came up with, and these were coming from business owners, you know, one-on-one mentorship, classes, affordable spaces, of course, consolidated information on permits in multiple languages, access to community commercial kitchen, street vending opportunities, more community grants, those kinds of things were what was highlighted. And a lot of that, you can go to the next slide, a lot of that did actually inspire or was brought forth to our strategic doing session. And I read the aspirational quote that we had come up with. It's certainly nuanced, but very thorough. When we hosted that, and actually Redmond was there. There's a couple photos. You're right there in blue. We had a lot of folks that were, local leaders, business support institutions, and then we also had vendors. We had, business owners that were there. And we worked together for about 4 hours and came up with those Pathfinder projects. And all 3 of those had some form of success. And so, that's really what will be kind of, like I said, that aspirational quote is what I'm looking forward to, or the framing question is something that we're going to work on here in a minute. But that really does help get the North Star. And then out of that, if you look at, imagine a robust entrepreneurial community that authentically welcomes and empowers underestimated business owners with a sense of belonging throughout all stages of business and idea development. Those Pathfinder projects are mentorship, mobile food vendor portal, trying to consolidate access, and then the Johnson County Business Education series. So here we have education, connection, and reducing barriers. So you can kind of see how those things connect to the aspirational quote. Now, I'm going to kind of give you sort of big picture here. Our recommendations, the biggest one is that we said, look, we need neighborhood level multicultural business hubs. We basically need places where people look like us. That those are accountants, those are people who are bookkeepers or lawyers or whoever that is that we feel comfortable going to, and maybe they speak the language that we speak, and they're from my neighborhood. And it was really kind of a redistribution of power, really, because at the time, and still truly, it is, we have a business chamber. And I think some of the frustrations are sometimes that, the funding goes into to one entity and then it trickles down. But I think what we're really trying to say is that needs to be decoupled. And you need to look at, reducing those barriers so people could walk somewhere if they needed to. So they, could trust somebody that they are loaning money to, maybe. And some of that, sorry, if you go back once, Stephanie. So there's inward facing additional work and outward facing. And the reason why we said inward facing is because we heard so much, and we already knew this, but we heard so many times that people don't feel welcome, no matter where they are. So that internal facing is like, what are the changes in policies and procedures? What's the internal work that the cities and counties can do for business support? And then some of the outward facing, providing those resources, uplifting what we already have, and then actually building infrastructure. So if you go to the next slide, I won't go into all of these, but we had further recommendations as to what those could look like. And I was very excited to hear that the Better Together 2030, this is one of the pillars. This is something that we can look at and say, what are our zoning codes? What are we doing with empty buildings? And is the city, currently Iowa City doesn't do any loan programs. And they may have reasons to do that, but if they do, this is what it could look like. So it's also exciting to know that Iowa City has also invested some of its ARPA funds into, trying to provide some of this. So, and they're kind of in the middle of that, or hopefully near the end. I don't know where you're at, but so the city is listening to this plan because we directly worked with as many folks as we possibly could. And I wanted to bring that up today too, and thanks for those that kind of encouraged it, because we have done a lot of the work and we do know a lot of the barriers, and it's accessible. And so the data in that sense is collected, and I wanted you to know that that is available, and that it's present in a lot of the things that are being worked on in our community. So, and I'm happy to answer questions. Hopefully that was like 15 minutes. I don't know.
Well, thank you again. I'll let someone else start off with questions. Anyone has any?
So I was just wondering, what does the data look like for correctly estimated businesses?
Do you mean like what's the percentage of businesses that are
For
under?
all of the data, you show it for, I think as you accurately characterize it, underestimated, right? But how does that compare to
What's
the other
exist-
group?
What's existing?
Yeah,
Kinda
what's for a comparison? Like, so I can look at that and say, this group feels significantly X below this other group.
So the focus of that study and that plan wasn't comparative. So I don't have that data readily available.
But isn't it then hard to figure out what needs to be uniquely done and what needs to be generally done?
I think
Without the
that,
comparison?
right. I mean, I'm not saying that comparisons aren't useful and certainly would welcome somebody taking on that work. I think that looking at and focusing on those that have been marginalized for so long, I think that there's merit within that data in and of itself.
I'm not saying there is definitely merit in the data. It's just
Yeah.
that it makes it easier to, make a sort of a trivial example. When I go into motor vehicles, I feel completely unheard, right? There's all sorts of ways in which I'd fill it out and say, it's a terrible experience. They don't listen to me, they don't do all those sorts of things. That's just a function of the administrative state. Then there's other times when if I walk through the door, I'm treated one way, and if someone else walks through the door, they're treated significantly different. And that's another piece of information I think is critically important. So one is a general problem that needs to be addressed, and one is a very specific problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I think we were focusing on solving a very specific problem. So I don't have information on the general problems, but I know that the chamber does. They've studied them, the economic development in the area quite closely. So I think that if you wanted that data, it's available if you want to
So we
compare.
can just look at, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Chairperson Dillard, I do have this one question, but then I'd like to make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
So the one question that I have is that, to the best of your knowledge, how has the chamber used the information to make change?
So I was just yesterday at the joint session. So ICAD and the business partnership have joined. And to be fair, they've been doing that since we put this out. So they have not done anything to date. One thing that I will say, and Katie could probably speak this better than I can, I was very surprised and pleased to see that ICAD is now a part of the chamber. And so they are kind of becoming, did I say ICAD? I'm sorry. 20, better, can I even say this? I don't even know if Katie's here. Anyway, Better Together 2030, that vision is now a part of the chamber. So they can't get away from it because the Inclusive Economic Development Plan is a foundational part of one of the columns. So they have not to date done anything except pull it into their entity, which is promising, I guess I'll say. So, but there has been no direct action.
One more just request, Stephanie, if it's possible to pull up the other website, Better Together, I think it's BT 2030. And if you would scroll down to the bottom of their site, as far as who are the supporters and sponsors.
So not this one.
I think it's that one. Maybe if you scroll down to the bottom. No, it's not that one. It's BT 203 or BT2030.org. And while she's doing, I'll just make a statement, but I will keep it short. 2030 is a system that has been developed with a group of individuals to be able to manage how the city and the surrounding community is going to move forward. Mm-hmm. We have not been actively engaged in the system that's being created, which means inherently there are pieces of the system that are not going to allow us to be able to thrive, okay? So we have several things that we can think about doing, right? We could say, we're going to go against the wave and we're going to go in and try to go in a different direction, but this is a system we're going to fight. Or we're going to say, we're going to ensure that the system, the way that it's set up, is going to be to our advantage. And in many cases, the advantage of the city is does it have, can you go to the bottom?
It brought up the same site. that
Probably
we
the same thing, okay.
This
That's
is-
different than what I have. There may be,
Part of, we're looking at the actual plan itself? Or-
yeah, I'm looking probably at the actual, yeah, I'm looking at the actual plan. But the what I was going to show you is that the companies that are part of the system and making sure the system's set up. And when you're part of the system and you make sure the system is set up, it is going to do what you want it to do. Because if it doesn't do what you want it to do, then you will then have repercussions. The reason that the two organizations got together is pressure was put on them. It wasn't the first time. The first time pressure was put on them, they said, no, we'll stay separate. This time, the pressure was put on, they say, okay, we'll change. And so they put pressure on the system, made a plan of the big vision of where they're supposed to go, and they're heading in that direction. You with me? So we're not just talking about, when we think about systemic problems and challenges, we're not talking about just stuff that was created before. This is being created now, and this is the guiding light to where they're going to be in 7 years. We're either with it or we're not, but this is what they're doing. The people that we would want to be involved in this are not involved in this. Some of them are, but not all of them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something we have to think about. Now, the second part was V showed you that she went out and did what I would deem as fact-finding. She went out and talked to business people and had conversations. Now, look, if a business person, specifically a business person from our community, spends time to go to a meeting and talk to you versus trying to get their business working, it's important to them. So they made time to say that this is important, and then what they're looking for is that what is going to be the result of my effort of sharing to this, that this is important. And the way that it's designed, it's the only one who then determines that it is important or not is this combined chamber. They're the only ones. And they appreciate all of our communities, but they don't necessarily understand all of our communities, so they don't do things that are necessarily in our best interest, whether by accident or on purpose, you can, whatever you want to call it. So we see from an economic development, this is something that, again, people have said is an issue, and they're looking for, in essence, someone to help them. This is, to me, where we come in when it comes to us being able to move forward. Whether you want to call us big sister, or whether you want to call us that we have our influence, the city has connections with every one of these organizations that's on this list that help put this together. Friends sometimes not friends, but they have connections with everyone. And we have the ability to be able to make changes and adjustments to make sure that it meets our community's needs. So that's why I wanted you to see this is that as much as we think that maybe we want to create something, they're creating it today. What we really want to do is we want to make sure that in the creation of whatever they're doing, that they allow us to have space to be at our best.
So that we have a voice.
So that we have a voice. Listen, if people are having problems with rent, they would not have problems with rent if we owned the property. Then it would be a different conversation of what we're having, right?
Right.
But if we don't own the property, then we have to deal with whatever, quote unquote, the market bears.
This is the,
I think this is the.
this is,
Is this
That
the-
is
Oh,
that is
yeah.
exactly it. So that's the information at the bottom of, these are the folks, right? And again, there are others involved, but these, in short, these are the money people.
So, Commissioner Simmons, I hear your statement. I agree with your statement. I'm wondering if there's a course of action that you are suggesting or you're putting on the table for us as a commission.
I'm right now just giving some information, but what we're getting ready to do is we're getting ready to talk about what our strategic doing is planning on doing.
Yes.
And that's going to say, what work should we think about in general when we get people together? And then how do we leverage that work? So in essence, they created a plan They put a video to share their story, which is what we're supposed to do, right? And they got buy-in. We have to do the exact same thing. So all of this that we're putting together is so that we can show that our story is that here's this plan that you want, but here's where the plan is missing, and you need us to be able to make it happen. If not, it's not in anyone's best interest. Everyone fails if we're not a part of it. And here's how we're going to be a part of it. But the strategic doing is what's next. And that's why it's so important of how we leverage that tool.
Thank you so much. I know Commissioner Nobis had her hand raised. Would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question regards population densities and whether or not more attention is given to larger populations, because that's just the way things are done, or if there's an understanding that obviously, like, some of us come from smaller populations. Of course, I'm going to speak on behalf of the Indigenous peoples, and there's a reason for that. And so understanding the dynamics of those issues, that again, people are not erased or left out of the conversation simply because there's less of them.
Thank you for that. Are you directing that towards the towards V's
Towards
presentation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Commissioner Nobis, were you asking if the plan and study itself was focused more on urban areas, or I just wasn't sure the question.
No, not on urban areas, but just like,
Or more-
well, I mean, moving forward, right? Like, from what you found, like, you've obviously found that there's like higher densities of different populations, right? So, but does that mean that, like, moving forward, like, more attention and funding and resources will be given to these communities, or are we also trying to work on an equity basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think always trying to work on an equity basis, and this is, I want to say one of our recommendations too is that, like, this is just the first step, that there are things we openly admit to, we could have done better, or that encourage the next phase to look in deeper. And so I would say that we probably did our best. We went to more rural areas as well, which I know it doesn't exactly get to what you were saying, but just from a population density kind of framework, I think we were looking in that capacity. We were probably looking more like urban and rural. So we would go out to like Lone Tree and Oxford, but in terms of certain like communities and just the sheer fact that they're smaller. I don't think that we were trying to over-represent, but I think that there's probably always a bias in there. So I think that what I'm always striving for is to do better. And so because I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all, and I think that if you go through the plan and look through the recommendations, like, it's really trying to focus on how do we make those spaces that feel unsafe safer, that we can reduce barriers, and by reducing those barriers, hopefully it gets us on this path of reducing more and more and more, uncovering these biases, as you kind of mentioned. So I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like it's a really great question.
I think the one thing is that the 2030 project talked about this 15 minutes of being able to operate within communities. And I do agree, let me say it differently because you didn't say you agree. So I want to say, I do believe that there is this tendency to go towards more populated areas than those areas that are not. But in this situation, to create that type of environment that they're talking about, they have to be able to hit environments that have kind of different demographic looks. So to me, this is one of those things where if you say you want to do this, then we should really encourage them to figure out how to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And hold what they said that they want to do, for us to help make sure that that happens, make sure that that's even a possibility.
And to Commissioner Simmons' point, that there are so many people that the city are connected through 2030, BET 2030, a lot of those people are going to be here next Thursday. And that's directly because Katie Gerlach was like, we need to be involved in this. We are those people. And so she's trying to hold them accountable to showing up. And that's a moment, an opportunity that we don't want to miss. So I completely agree with the system and how to be a part of it, how to affect change.
Again, thank you so much. Commissioner Nobis, did you have any other questions?
I was just trying to respond to V, letting them know that I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, like, I sometimes feel like we go towards what we can see. And that's how we move towards inequity, right? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you again. I'll probably have questions after this meeting. Thank you for the information. It's definitely a lot. So I really appreciate you coming to present. Is there any other comments or thoughts from commissioners? If not, then I'm going to go ahead and move to public comment. If you in the room would like to speak, come to the podium. Thank you.
I just kind of have a question on what just happened here. So my name is Alicia Velasquez. I'm the owner of the House of Dunklergy, which is a Native American boutique. This kind of what Christina was saying. Why wasn't the Native community invited to the table? How can we get invited to the table? There's at least 5 businesses, entrepreneurs that are Native American that are here in Iowa City. How do we get invited to the table? And I think what I'm asking is, how can this commission help us? We are a small group, and I get it. Everyone looks at numbers. But how are we supposed to have numbers if no one invites us to the table? I was not aware of this thing that was happening. I was not invited. So it kind of hurts a little bit because I feel like I'm not seen.
I would like to respond to that. I mean, like,
I'm not.
what?
Are we allowed
You
to
weren't
respond
invited?
to? I'm sorry, Commissioner Novus. Are we allowed to respond? Okay.
It's an item on the
All right, just making sure. Sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. So Alicia, like, you didn't know about this?
No, I
from
did
the
not.
beginning of this process?
No, not of the.
What?
No, I didn't. So
I find that very confusing because, I mean, like, you are a very prevalent Native American business, and I know that these folks knew who you were.
Exactly.
So that really kind of, like, blows my mind, actually. Unless this process started before you kind of got established.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd
maybe.
like to find that information
But the thing
out.
too is like, this is a perfect example. Whether if this started before I got here, but this is a perfect example. How can the commission help the Native community be in the forefront, be invited to think, like you were saying, how think Iowa City? What was that? I'm sorry. That you were just speaking.
The commission?
Yeah,
I mean,
the dream. Yeah.
Better. Okay. Better together.
oh, better
Like,
together.
how do you exactly to your point? What you were saying is that how are we invited to the table, right? And how can you help the tiny, small, little bitty Native community that's here? How can you speak for us and help us and let us know? Because I think we do have a lot of valid opinions. We have, this is kind of our land. We should have say.
Like,
yes. go
yeah,
ahead.
no, Alicia, I'm so glad that you were here because that's exactly the point I was making just now in a much more polite way. Because I'm not into the oppression Olympics, but I'm definitely into making sure that erased communities are represented. And so, like, that's why I was talking about equity, because I had a feeling that this was happening. Because I don't know. I just had that feeling. Because it always happens. It always happens to the Indigenous community every single time. We're having an issue right now, even with the county, and horrific remarks made to myself, and yet, like, the county itself won't even talk about it, and the community won't do anything about it, because it doesn't matter how racist people are or how much they leave Indigenous people out of conversations. It's just, like, allowed in, like, this society. So like I'm just really behind you on this, and like, we'll do whatever. Like I hope that this commission can do anything to help make sure that you are included in this process, and that maybe you do get whatever funds there are for the Indigenous community, even if we are small in number.
Because at this point, I don't even care about money anymore. I just want us to be a voice and heard and be invited to the table. I think that's really important. And I've been coming to this commission meetings and as much as I can. The one thing that I hear is that help us, help the Indigenous community, help bring awareness. People don't know about the Indigenous community. People don't know the differences that we have. Just because we're Native American doesn't mean that we're all from the same tribe. We have different tribes. We have different traditions, different ways of thinking, And so I think that going forward with this commission is please, 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 I'm begging you, help us. Help us to be heard. Help us to be seen. We're not vanished. We're not in the history books say that we're here. I'm standing here before you. So I don't know if this was the right time to say it, but I just wanted to say it before I forget. Help us be visible, and invite us to the table because we are small, but we are very mighty. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. For speaking, I just want to say, we'll talk about this in our next section, but if you have not been invited to our meeting next week, you are invited, and I hope that you're there. Go ahead.
Hi, Angie Jordan. Yeah, I just wanted to comment because before South of 6, before economic development, a lot of my focus was on youth empowerment. And that turned into family empowerment. Families go home at night, turned into neighborhood and community. And on the south side, the South District, before there was a South Association, there were pockets of folks in neighborhoods already doing the work, right? And they had limited resources. So they decided, hey, let's try to pull some of these resources together where we have a lot of the same challenges. That's why the Neighborhood Association was created that brought 4 different entities together. Those 4 entities together made up that voice. It still wasn't fully representative and never will be fully representative of all the South District residents, but it had a little more momentum because it was slightly louder and it was a little bit bigger, right? We were pushing into spaces that weren't just about how do we increase literacy at our schools, but we were talking about how do we get access to bicycles. We were asking those questions at the ground, and we were pretty repetitive, and if we weren't getting the answers here, we'd go over there, but we wouldn't stop. We'd link that. So we're asking the city, but we're also asking Bike Library, and we're also asking neighborhood centers, and it continued to be this process of connecting and pushing momentum into the light. This is just my opinion, so I'm only speaking for myself. When we got to a point where we pushed for economic development, and for 3 years we worked to get a self-supported municipal improvement district, that was a lot of education to get a mandatory self-tax of commercial properties that were predominantly owned by white and male folks in our community. They now, for the next 5 years, are paying a tax to make improvements to a business district. Again, the grassroots of that was to revitalize a neighborhood. So it's exciting to be part of Better Together. It was terrifying to be a tri-chair of Project Better Together because I didn't know if I'd be listened to, if I'd be taken seriously. I was able to help bring more awareness for the South District, but also just neighborhood-based things in general. And for them to have it as one of their pillars, not only makes me excited, but it also holds me accountable, like, we need to see this through. So just giving a little context, that's part of why I stepped into economic development, not because it's my background, because I want to continue to push and hold accountable, but to inform. Right? And I think the more of us that are doing that, the more it opens doors to others who maybe don't have that opportunity to normalize. No matter how big or small the population is, if you have a voice, we need to pause and we need to be heard. So I just wanted to add that into the space. South of 6 now gets to be up there. I'm going to talk to Katie. Our logo is not up there. We fought to be up there, but even in that core group, we still have to push. So no matter where this group goes, I hope as it opens doors, it realizes it's not just about opening doors, it's about breaking down the wall where that door frame's at, right? So just wanted to add that into this space. And strategic doing, I'm super geeked about it because it gives us action and it gives us legitimacy, and it also gives us a way to document wins and also showcase that we are better together, so.
I just wanted to respond to Alicia's comment. That process started before. I would never, ever exclude as particularly such an important part of our community. And I would be thrilled to make sure that we do it more iterations of data collection and making sure that your voices are included. That would never, ever come into the purview of exclusion. I just wanted to be very clear about that. And I love you. And so I just wanted to be, I wanted to say that and make sure publicly that I also apologize that you felt that way ever. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. And I do hope that there are more iterations of the Inclusive Economic Development Plan, because we can't just let it sit on a shelf. That is my real worry. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. We need to include that.
Don't go anywhere. Because I have a quick, actually, kind of two questions. One, are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce? Yeah, is your,
Yes, I am. But they never tell me anything. So I don't know why I'm a member. But I got a scholarship for it, so you know.
Yeah, that's how I got on the board. I got a free scholarship
So-
and then demanded to be on the board.
my question is like, are these businesses, are there going to be, is there a requirement to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce? Or is there going to be some interaction with businesses that aren't?
Are you talking about for the Inclusive Economic Development Plan or South of Six? I'm not sure who you're looking at.
I'm not sure which is which, to be honest.
Okay.
Was
You're
it-
talking about
there's-
ICAD and business partnership, I
Yeah,
think.
so the ICAD and Business Partnership have merged, and they have a name that I can't reveal to you until next week. But they have come together, and that is the chamber. And South of Six and the downtown district are, they're called SMIDs, and it's basically that they can tax themselves to improve their areas, to do programming, to do all that kind of stuff. That is very different than just having a downtown or just having a mall or something like that. So those are different entities, and I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I also have Angie, who's the director of South of Six, to answer those questions. But in a nutshell, that's what a SMID is. And so they are separate entities. And so in terms of the Inclusive Economic Development Plan, we didn't look at any of that, and it was before South of Six existed. But we actually, the businesses that we were engaging with, by and large, were not part of the chamber because, for what Alicia just said, like, I mean, they really weren't, and I hope that they do more. I think that they're, but it's at the time, and I know because I was a part, like it felt like, what are we doing, So yeah.
And I would say, V and her team did a very in-depth look of different communities that traditionally would not have had the opportunity to even speak. And, that brought to light items and things that we should focus on. And this is for me, the chamber still has to work through what its role is in helping businesses other than accepting their money for them to do programs without providing the type of support. And that's where the SMIDs came in, is that there is an accountability that they're saying, I will give you this money, right? In essence, I will tax myself for you to do things for us. But that's where, again, we come into play, whereas from an economic development perspective, now it is clear that there are things that we should work on. And they can't say it's hidden. The fact-finding has been done. All of that has been done. Now the question is, who will resolve the issue, or will we just get to Groundhog Day and do this again in 5 years?
That dissemination of information, it's a problem everywhere. And there's a case in point right there.
Yeah. Well, is there anyone else that has public comment online? I did not ask. Please raise your hand. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak? If not, we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, which is strategic doing workshops. I would like to also open it up for public comment. If anyone had any thoughts based on our last meeting that they'd like to enter in as we go into this final discussion, please speak now. All right. We're going to invite Angie and V back to the microphone.
Okay, well, I think we mostly wanted to focus on the framing question, but we also could update on how things are shaping up in terms of strategic doing, and I don't know.
And V, I think you need to talk more in the.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, what I was saying that I think we really want to focus a majority of our time on the framing question, but I also want to, answer any questions you may have about the session itself and how it's shaping up in terms of invitations and things like that. And I don't know if we had a count of people who signed up as of recently.
I would say maybe 20, there's more for Thursday, maybe about 20 for Thursday, probably half that for Saturday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then earlier, I asked Stephanie for a list of all the people that have been invited. When you're able to send that to me, maybe you can send it to all of us so we can see.
Well, it's compiled off of, what may be easier is to send out what everybody sent too, because there were some of you had cross-referenced the same folks.
Okay, yeah.
So you can just see that. I'm trying to think.
And then.
But it was, I think it was 69, but there was also a news release. So I use the word invitation loosely because I think some people think it's an invite only, but it's a public event and anybody's welcome, so.
Awesome, yeah.
Great. So I think things are shaping up, and we have a sense of kind of how many people, we're going to order the food, we're going to do all the things, so.
We've got the childcare. It's exciting. I know you guys already know this, but just putting it out there, having the initial one at the senior center, but then the next one is going to be out in a neighborhood, and also being able to get catering from, minority-owned businesses. So these little pieces that seem small, but we all know they're huge, and they also help to make a more successful event feel more inviting, and that when people are there, they actually belong. So thank you for allowing this opportunity through strategic doing.
And when you say in the neighborhood, are you talking about the Saturday event? Okay, just making sure I understood.
Yeah. So the first one is really going to be getting us into that whole experience of the strategic doing and getting to the Pathfinders. The second one on Saturday is really, okay, the Pathfinders are set. How do you want to be involved? So that's how we're envisioning those. I guess if there aren't any general questions or comments about strategic doing and what we're going to be doing together next week, I would really like to spend time on the framing question, and hopefully you all have had conversations amongst yourselves. I have been contacted by a couple folks just asking clarifying questions, so I feel like hopefully we're primed and ready to go.
However you want to move forward, but I did want to read what Commissioner Wangui Gathua gave me because she's not here tonight.
Yeah, please.
And I did ask Stephanie if she was able to write it up there. She put together a question. I know that Commissioner Simmons did send out an email to everyone with his North Star statement. And that statement's in the packet.
Because it's double-sided, it's on the very last page.
Awesome. Thank you. So would right now be okay to read that? Yeah. So Commissioner Gathua said that since she is in Atlanta this week, she wanted to go ahead and provide the following question as her entry for this framing question. How do we provide safer spaces for people to tell their truth, heal, and be empowered while dismantling systems that have dehumanized and devalued us? So I just wanted to have it up there because, at least for me, I'm a visual person. I think it's a little bit easier to hear or see what's going on as we talk about the different things.
Yeah.
So how did you want us to go into this?
And then so I think probably reading Commissioner Simmons as well, since we have two prepared.
Would you like to read yours?
Help Iowa City communities express their truth and find ways to reconstruct systems that allow everyone to live prosperous lives.
I'm sorry, did you want to? So I know Commissioner Gathua is not here to talk about how she came to this question, but Commissioner Simmons, I don't know if you want to expand upon your thoughts behind this North Star statement.
This North Star statement is is my version of the Underground Railroad. Those who know, and those who don't, we don't worry about. The work that needs to be done is work for us to do. Systems have no feelings. They don't care. The systems were created even before the country was created. So when it comes to changing the system, that to me has not the feeling. The feeling is that how we have been impacted by it and who hears us. And I very much believe that we should be heard, but I also believe that when it comes directly to the system, that the system doesn't really care. So my hope is that for those of us who do care, we talk. For the rest of the ones who don't care, we don't bring them into our consciousness.
Yeah, I wanted to note too that between the two statements, there's a lot that are similar, and they're very different. So there's truth and healing and systems are really the three things that they share. One is talking about reconstructing systems. Another is talking about dismantling. And then one talks about those systems having dehumanized and devalued us, while the other one takes a different spin and is more about the freeing of, or everyone, getting to live a prosperous life. So
I like the meaning, not of this one, of the first one. I like the meaning of that one. From a reading perspective, like I said, those who get it, get it. I don't want to have to explain to people, anything. This is specifically for this project of doing, and that's when there gets to be the discussion, because those people who come are ones who are committed to being a part of figuring this out.
So with yours, I like both of them, but like for yours, it sounded a little like passive to me. So what I kind of tweaked it a little bit. So instead of help Iowa City, I want to say empower Iowa City. I don't want to help, I want to do it, right? Or I want them to do it. So empower, and then to express their truth in order to reconstruct. I don't want to find ways we're going to do it again. So kind of changing that passive language to something that's more like, this is what we're doing. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry, it makes a lot of sense.
I think I really love both of the statements. I wish there was a way to push them together and add the word thrive. That word really stood out to me in our last discussion.
Action word.
Just because we're living and we want to live through this and we have to live through this. So how do we thrive? And going back to what you were talking about earlier, we need to be in the right places to get things done. So we have to thrive and live there. So
we could say that allow everyone to thrive.
So combining that would be empower Iowa City communities to express their truth in order to reconstruct systems that allow everyone to thrive.
could be that. I know, Commissioner Krebs, you like the word empower. I feel like the word empower is very overused in this world. I wonder if there's another word that could just mean, just have a stronger punch. I don't know what that would be.
Maybe enable. Enable is probably too weak, but it's something like, I think, what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, I think enable is like the word you use, weak is.
Yes, yeah.
It's not as a strong word to me. I'm thinking more guide or more of an action word. Propel.
What's wrong? Thrive.
Elevate?
I
Won't
pulled
talk
up
about empower.
elevate.
Okay.
Elevate was
Elevate's
good.
not bad.
There's also, I did the thesaurus.
Nice.
Authorize, sanction, warrant, delegate, certify.
I like the word authorize. I don't know why. Just giving
Authority,
people,
maybe.
Yeah, like we are giving you permission to help Iowa City, to
Strengthen.
be a part of the community that moves us forward.
Facilitate.
Maybe even something related to elevate,
Amplify.
something to,
Elevate. Wordsmithing is a difficult thing in a group sometimes.
I had another suggestion. I don't think it's going to be acceptable, but for lots of reasons. But I just have a little bit of a problem with systems. It's to me too abstract. It's too implicitly political. I don't know, but regardless. So, and I'm going to make it a little more personal, which means it probably isn't going to be acceptable, but I'll just say it anyway. Find ways to sort of like, it's finding ways to enable people to interact or express differently or come together or something, as opposed to deconstructing the system. Find different ways to people reinvent ways of interaction or something. I don't know. I don't have a way of saying it. I just wanted to throw that out there. But if we end up with systems, I'm okay.
I'd love to explore your reasoning for not liking systems a little deeper. Could you explain a little bit more?
It's sort of like, I think of...
And I think you need to talk in the
I think
microphone.
the roots- Oh, sorry. With respect to systems, everybody has a slightly different way of thinking about them. Sometimes they're implicit, sometimes they're explicit.
Yeah.
Sometimes they refer to legal systems, sometimes they refer to implicit ways of acting. There's all this stuff that is in the word system. And everybody
Commissioner
interprets
Novus,
it a
I
bit
think you're
different.
on mute. Okay.
We'll talk about it as soon as I'm done. You need more clothes than that.
I don't know if you know, Commissioner Novus, you are not muted.
I'll do it.
Excuse me, sorry about that. My daughter's getting ready for bed.
No problem.
It's just that I think everybody interprets it a little bit differently. That's really what the problem, it's not something inherent with, it's just that it's such a broad term that that's what.
I kind of feel like the communities that we're going to be working with will fully understand what we're saying. Maybe somebody disagrees, but I feel like the communities who are under the boot of the systems will get it.
I think if we're going to be doing this framing question with a plethora of different types of people, I can see how people might have their own views of what systems is. So maybe it's our job to define what that means. I don't know if that's how we would move forward. I think I understand what systems means, but I can't guarantee everyone else does. It's just my thought. And I don't know if Commissioner Novus has her hand raised on purpose. If you'd like to speak, I don't want to.
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
I had my hand raised. I'm sorry I interrupted earlier. I'm
It's okay.
actually at home tonight because I couldn't get childcare. So trying to get my daughter ready for bed and pack for a trip tomorrow. So I think I unmuted myself. So I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so I missed the whole conversation because, like, I guess by accident, like, the whole room got muted. I think when Stephanie was just trying to mute me. But like, I don't even like. I'm trying to see what we're talking about, and I can't see it. Like, what are we looking at?
Can you see it
Okay.
now? Okay. So we were talking.
Is this in the agenda?
So this
last
is a.
page.
Well,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was scrolling. I couldn't find it. Okay.
so in the agenda, you're going to see the last page has a statement that Commissioner Simmons has submitted, and then on the screen right now is a statement that Commissioner Gathua submitted, and we're just discussing what we like and or do not like, and how we would like to combine or not combine for a framing question.
I absolutely do love systems because these are colonial systems, economic, societal, political, so I would call them dismantling colonial capitalist systems myself, or we can just go with colonial if some people are, capitalist. But, I would say dismantling colonial systems because that's honestly what we're doing. And they are systems. This is a very systematic endeavor. It has been since day one.
I mean, colonial systems is very defining. if you have a question, if you'd like to speak, you are our facilitator.
I would also, I hear what you're saying with the systems and it being like this broad, general kind of like, and people can interpret it different ways. I actually think for a framing question, that's good, because what that can help is when we're looking at assets or the projects you want to do, having these different ideas of what systems are will bring out more ideas of how to engage it. And then you all will have the chance to choose, you know, in your own way, what systems means for you in this framing question when you're moving forward with the project. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's good to have context for what you're actually trying to do, and so that does open it up more. The other thing I wanted to say was looking at the empower. There are other things like building capacity for, mobilizing. Yeah, I think we'd already said amplify. But I think building capacity or building up, or, you know, there's an action there. I understand wanting to stay away from empower because it gets overused, and it's also another way that it could be multiplicitous. You know, what does that mean? You know, if we say like building up capacity for Iowa City residents, or Iowa City communities, that's very specific.
What about, so amplify, I think, is good. What if we said amplify Iowa City communities, something about their voice, amplify the voice of the Iowa City communities to express their truth?
I do like the word mobilize too with amplify.
So in that setting, it's really focused on the truth telling. So the projects that you're looking at will be geared towards that, those pathfinders. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just trying to let you, like, that's where you're headed, which is why we were trying to say that keeping it a little bit general is advantageous, because you're getting different people. You're getting people from education, from economic development, you know, those kinds of things.
So maybe they can bring their interpretation into it.
Exactly.
I think that's a good idea.
Shouldn't we have the word racism in here?
How would you suggest that we put it in there?
I don't know. But maybe we just can just add the word racism for now, just so that we can think about it. Because this is honestly what this is about, right?
Yeah.
Historical oppression and racism.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, and Sakau is just putting this out there. This process is fun because this is how it's supposed to be. So there's no wrong answers. With racism, in your opinion, reconstructing colonial systems that allow everyone to thrive, would that nod to racism? Kind of being, I mean, it's not explicit, but again, that framing, keeping it broad, but also not losing why you all are here.
Getting more to the core of what you're trying to do.
I mean, well, racism is because we could honestly say we're talking about feminism, right? We could be talking about all sorts of things, because I mean, the Christian colonizer has, been has been misogynistic and anti LGBTQ and all those things, right? So I mean, it's not that those things aren't important. I'm just saying this is specifically a commission on racism, right? So that's all I'm trying to say. If that's what this is, then we have to be specific about it.
Yeah, because we don't want to put in intersectionality. Some people's minds will literally bleed out of their ears.
I think what we've got is a start for sure.
What about dismantling colonial systems of racism, or racist colonial systems, dismantling racist, I don't know, something to that effect.
Dismantling colonial systems that have historically oppressed. I call us people of the world majority. So you can just put whatever in there for now, that have historically oppressed people of the world majority, and what's the word? continue, not the word continue, but something like continue, like modern, racism, you know, like modern forms of racism or whatever, something like that.
Could you remind us again what the purpose is of the framing question?
Yeah, the purpose of the framing question is at the beginning of our time together, we're going to say, you know, this is the North Star of where the commission would like to see. So when we've done like childcare summits, it's like we want people to be able to have childcare everywhere all the time or something like that. So you put that North Star out there and then you kind of work through different projects and programs that people in the room can provide their own resources towards, so their own assets, without having to ask anybody else for it. So then you get to these like kind of pathfinder projects that get to that North Star. So people are looking at that saying, am I getting there? Is that moving the needle? Are we working towards that? So it's a tough balance because you want it to be interpretable, but then you also want to make sure that you're getting out of it what you want, you know, that you're
And should
actually
it be
working towards it.
constrained at all by the mission statement of the commission, or should it be something that's outside that?
I mean, I think that the mission of the commission is kind of in here because it's like truth-telling, fact-finding, reconciliation. I think that there's a lot already in there.
Right, I'm just saying, but should the framing question sort of be constrained in some ways by that mission statement? That's all, just generally. Shouldn't the mission statement have some directive force on the framing question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it does.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
oh, did you have some? Oh, if I may, I use my favorite thing, GPT.
Thank God.
And put everything in there, and it came with a statement. I think collectively put everything together. Just a suggestion. It's kind of clunky, but it says, how can we strategically build capacity and amplify the voices of Iowa City communities to express their truths, all while addressing historical oppression, racism, and the need to reconstruct colonial systems, ultimately creating safer spaces for healing and empowerment.
Savory.
I don't know what did you say, Commissioner Nobis?
Did it say savory?
Safer spaces?
Oh, I heard savory spaces, and I was laughing because it's Czech.
That would be interesting.
I would love a savory space.
Those
We
are,
might be a
those
little
are called
hungry.
potlucks, I think.
Not sweet, savory.
Sorry.
Can you read that again, Chastity, or text it?
You want me to
maybe?
text it to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's awesome. We should, if we could get that in the chat so all of us can actually like see it and
Yeah, I'm gonna
respond to it
send it.
instead of trying to remember what you said.
Thank
So
you.
I just looked up also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's whatever, and it says the Truth and Reconciliation Commission provided those directly or indirectly affected by the legacy of the Indian residential school system with an opportunity to share their stories and experiences. So, I mean, honestly, like, it could be, like, our mission statement should be something that simple, I think.
Yeah, I think that when we've talked about, you know, a lot of the trainings too, Iowa City is unique in that it's not necessarily one specific thing, and that it's incorporating a larger community as well. So it's challenging in that way, but I don't disagree. I just kind of remember that being one of the challenges that faces this commission.
I just wanted to check, this is really for the strategic doing versus for us broadly. And I just like us to keep focused, because I think that after we have the strategic doing, we'll have a better sense of us broadly, what we should do.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was our mission statement. Oh my God, my bad.
It can be. I mean, so I'm just saying it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. So.
And my thought is that if we kept it, if we agreed to the strategic doing, it gives us flexibility
Yeah.
to continue to explore
Definitely.
what it means for us from a broader perspective.
Yeah.
But this is just for next Thursday
Yeah.
and next Saturday. And it would give us data that would then allow us to go from there.
So how about amplify the truths of Iowa City community in order to dismantle systems of racial oppression
I like that.
for this one.
Not just amplify, but how about provide,
Stephanie, could you make it just a little bit bigger on the screen when you're done? Thank you.
provide some, I don't know how you want to identify BIPOC folks, but we could just say provide BIPOC folks in Iowa City with a space. So provide BIPOC folks in Iowa City with a space to express their truths about historical oppression and racism. So I would say take amplify Iowa City communities, but whatever. And racism for to move towards reconciliation.
So if we, looking at, again, what you are putting out there is really, thank you so much, is really focused on creating space, like provide BIPOC people in Iowa City communities with the space to express their truth about historical racism and oppression to move towards reconciliation. So when people are in those strategic doing sessions, they're going to look at that and be like, so I have to provide a space to express their truth. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there's, if you get that specific.
So do you mean like a physical space?
Yeah, that's what it's, I think, going to read as. Yeah.
Oh, so how about opportunity?
So before we move forward, Stephanie, can you like number there's 3 options right now. There's the one that Sakalis is working on, or 4 options. There's that one.
What do you want me to label number 2?
You don't have to label them, but if they can just be like, they can stand out a little bit more, because I know there's notes in some areas.
I'll number them and then I'll go delete the other stuff. So what's number 2 then?
That would be the Amplify one. I believe that Sakalis, actually, there's Empower Iowa City Community in between those 2.
And my amplify Iowa City communities one, take off the amplify Iowa City communities. It's just to provide BIPOC folks in Iowa City.
Okay.
Or just provide. Right.
Okay. And then we can get rid of building up capacity. We can scroll down and get rid of those ones. I think dismantling colonial systems was something, unless, and then mine is number 5. And we still have Commissioner Simmons, I think, which has been manipulated a little
That
bit.
was, I think,
Totally fine with the manipulation.
Of
number
course.
2. I think that was number 2.
Oh, is that number 2? Okay.
Yeah, because it was.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah,
was
you're right.
help.
Sorry, I am, okay. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah, to thrive. That's true. Number 2 ends with to allow everyone to thrive.
And now we can see the options.
I feel like number 2, the one I was talking about, is like a good beginning. Like it's a good first sentence. And then like some of these other ones are great second sentences. You know what I mean?
So the
like,
framing
number
question
one
is
like,
just one question, right? One sentence, right?
Yeah, we try and push them sometimes to run on, so.
Okay.
It's okay if that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can make it a longer sentence. So what I'm saying is number 2 like says this is what we're doing.
And it's to
And
thrive.
then the second part of it could be like this is the result we want. Right?
Stephanie, can we change the number 2, everyone to thrive?
That allow everyone to thrive, yeah.
Oh, did I say 2? I'm sorry. I was trying to say 3. I probably confused everybody. I'm sorry. Yeah, so number 3 is like it's what we're doing, right? It's like what and how we're doing this. And then if we can add on to that, we can like tack on like one of these other pieces, and like it'll say like to move towards reconciliation so that we can blah 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
like, and you can just cut and paste some of these other things on there if you want. But I mean, that's what I think we need to do. We need to define like what we're doing so that people can, and so we can end up with like what goal we're trying to get to.
So number 5 also does that.
Exactly.
We should just stick with 5. Or
I was going to suggest going back to number 2 for a second.
Yeah.
I'm still sort of gravitating to that one, but one way I was thinking of modifying it, which may be too meek again, is instead of in order to reconstruct systems that allow everyone to thrive, it was to find ways to reconnect that afford everyone the opportunity to thrive. Again, just a suggestion, not a.
I don't know if we want to lose reconstruct system, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might still be.
Yeah, I disagree with reconnect. I don't think there was ever a connection. We need to dismantle systems. That's what we need to do, sorry.
Yeah.
That's my truth.
But we're talking about like breaking down the bad and then creating the good. You know.
Why I was thinking reconnect.
I don't
It's not.
understand reconnect. There was never a connection.
Is there a way we can turn the clunky number 5 into some of the things that we are seeing at 1 through 4 to expand on that question? Because I think it does cover most of 1 through 4. There might be some things missing from
Like
it.
BIPOC communities, Voices of Iowa City, BIPOC communities.
I also not sure if we should say Iowa City, since this commission, though we are through this Iowa City, we are serving people throughout Johnson County. I don't know.
So BIPOC, Voices of BIPOC, are the BIPOC community?
Yeah, you could just take out Iowa City. Yeah, I mean, it does. It's a question mark at the end, I think is the only.
Yeah, it just needs a question mark at the end, I guess.
I think that what it gets at is the building capacity and then that elevation, right? Because you need to like kind of do the work and also make sure that voices are included.
What about strategically build relationships or community? Or
Where would you like that?
And 5, how can we strategically build relationships or build community?
We could just have community like.
Then we would have it twice. Instead of build capacity, we need to build, well, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm
Capacity
overthinking
is
it.
broad enough where you could say, well, what are we building
Yeah.
capacity for? Yeah.
And that could also include the connection piece too, that you were talking about, right? That it's not saying reconnect, but that it's also implying it's broad enough.
This is Commissioner Johnson. What about empower Iowa City communities to express their truth in order to define a new genesis in systems that afford our community, afford the opportunity for our community to thrive? A new beginning. Basically a reset.
I think you might need to repeat it a little bit so Stephanie can.
I didn't get all of that.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry. Empower Iowa City communities to express their truth in order to find a new genesis. For system, I think I lost it. A new genesis for systems.
That afford, just get rid of everything else.
The opportunity to thrive. I think that's what I said originally. I'm thinking new beginning, that's why.
You don't, yeah. I think beginning's better. Genesis is a little triggering for me.
Why?
Just it's not a term that like we tend to use in the indigenous community.
And just thinking out loud with y'all, are you finding in order to find, or are you creating? Just thinking about things that are being created.
Yeah, create a new beginning.
Express their truth in order to a new beginning. Genesis.
Create a
Beginning
foundation.
for systems.
Formation.
A new beginning for
Yeah, maybe create a foundation for a new system that affords.
Foundation.
foundation.
I like foundation better as well. Because I don't think it's never going to be a new beginning.
That affords.
You don't consider it to be a reset? If the system has been a problem in the past?
Well, I guess how I see this is like it's never going to be a reset, right? Like that would be amazing. It's going to be a long struggle of like incremental change.
But that's exactly why we want to push it, because it is, we want to literally break something that should be broken and then reset it so that it can actually mend the right way. That's what I would think.
Oh yeah, I mean, I that would be ideal, but that's, I mean, I don't think we can undo also like what's happened. So like sometimes when I hear this kind of talk, it kind of makes me feel like we're sort of like not. It's okay. I mean, I'm just getting too academic, but I would probably imagine like saying like better systems or something like that. But I'm not going to worry about it. Like I think if everybody likes new, that's cool too.
And I would also just encourage you, it's okay to push this piece, because each word is going to kind of frame that process. So yeah.
The reason why I said Genesis also is because I feel like that's something that's a very universal thing, something that everybody can understand and know. I'm still curious as to why you don't like Genesis.
I guess you can go check out the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and understand like how religion has like impacted Indigenous peoples. And though Genesis itself has like it's a scientific term,
Yes,
we very
it's a
much
scientific
associate
term.
that with. Obviously, yeah, but like colloquially, it's very much associated with biblical terminologies.
I mean, I think that, in the spirit of the commission, it's good to have the conversation and learn new things. And I think that if it is being harmful, it should probably be changed, right? And I think that would be afforded to probably everybody sitting here. One thing I do want to say is these are all really great. And that as we move through the rest of our time together, these may come back up again as opportunities, as we were just saying, for you to create a mission statement. I think that what I want to bring us back to is the strategic doing session itself. And the thing about, and I'm going to go back to number 5, I don't want to discount everything that everybody is saying. I just want to make sure that we're looking at the session itself. Number 5, while clunky, does provide specific and yet like concurrent opportunities for people to be involved or to imagine how they could be involved. So I don't have that, yeah.
I
So-
just brought that up because there's a mission statement that has been previously adopted by the commission that's on the website. So
Right.
that's why I
Also
just showed that briefly.
Did you want to show that then? Did you want to look at that?
No, I don't think we need to. I just wanted to insert that so that people knew that there is one that currently exists.
This isn't for the mission statement, this is for the strategic doing.
Correct, yeah. So just kind of focusing in on that while wordy, 5 gets at building capacity, amplifying voices, addressing historical oppression, racism, and then reconstructing colonial systems. And then also reconciliation, creating safer spaces for healing and empowerment. So it kind of takes you through the processes of, what are we addressing? How are we going to do it? And then when the shit hits the fan, how are we going to heal, right?
Yeah, I like 5 because I'm not really understanding like why we're even making something for the strategic doing like that's so specific like this, like it's like a mission statement. So I'm kind of going to go with what you say, V, because you're the one that's kind of laying this out and you kind of know the direction of the strategic doing. I would say and the need to deconstruct colonial systems though, but whatever.
Yeah, that's probably, good catch.
And I think with 5, we could also add about the create a foundation.
How we can strategically create a foundation, or maybe not.
Well, and ultimately creating a foundation of safer spaces or
safer
something.
spaces.
Something.
I also like number 5 because it allows us to dream. I know, Commissioner Novus, you said you don't see how we could ever reset or, get to a certain point. And while my one side agrees with you, there's also this tiny bit of hope that maybe one day we could. So, as far-fetched as that can feel sometimes, I would love us to be able to dream about that. I think that's the point of strategic doing, is what would it look like if we did live in a society where we didn't have to worry about any of this.
So, Stephanie, I think the creating a foundation for safer spaces is actually inside of it. So the ultimately creating
foundations for, and then you can take off that last sentence.
Yep.
So I would delete right here.
Or just
No,
I would copy it.
Just delete the last sentence.
Ultimately creating foundations for.
right there.
Foundation.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and then take off that like sentence you wrote at the end.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
Good job, Stephanie.
Yeah, seriously, nobody wants that job.
Not easy.
Stephanie, can you add a question mark instead of a period? I'm sorry. Okay.
I also don't think it's clunky. Just going to say that out loud. It's long and aspirational, and it's also very inclusive. It's going to get ideas
Actually,
percolating.
I have one more thing. Because actually, I don't want to end with a question mark. So instead,
But it's
start with-
supposed to be a question.
The framing
It's a
question.
Is it supposed to be a question?
It's a framing
Oh,
question.
All right.
So I had one,
Sorry.
Do an aspirational statement, but when we had our aspirational, you're talking to the 2 people that created a very big run-on sentence.
Yes. And so again,
Inspirational quote that
thinking
we
of it as that question, then the pathfinders will be perhaps the answers.
can I throw out one thing? And I feel uncomfortable throwing it out, but I'm going to throw it out anyway. I understand completely why we say BIPOC communities, right? I understand that. It's just that if you look at the statement on the TRC, it's more inclusive in that when it talks about reconciliation. And so I just worry, if this is the big framing question, if it's unintentionally exclusionary. Maybe not. Maybe that's the right way to do it, but I'm just throwing that out because it makes a point in the reconciliation statement in the TRC wording not to do that.
Can you put the reconciliation statement on the screen, please?
And I think it's just as strong without BIPOC. The statement is.
I mean, but how are we not defining the communities we're speaking with? We're
No, I
speaking
think
with BIPOC,
the
communities, right?
resolution.
Is that what you-
Well, we've invited a variety of different people to come. And so they can come.
Oh yeah, this is the strategic doing. See, that's why I said I'm not good at this because I keep Yeah.
Right.
So are we thinking we take out BIPOC?
And we're back to the Iowa City communities?
No, my thought is to keep the same.
Wait. Aren't people coming? People are coming to the strategic doing to support amplifying and building capacity for BIPOC communities to express their truths, right?
Yes, essentially,
So-
yes.
then it works.
Why can't we keep that in there?
So I would not, I mean, thank you, Commissioner Chastanoy, for bringing that up. I think that perhaps it feels uncomfortable because we're focusing on a very specific community, and we rarely do that. And so I understand that and potentially what you're bringing up is like, what the commission is set out to do. It sounds like on the mission statement, is that what you're?
Yeah, it's about reconciliation and multiple voices and amplifying these voices as well, but other voices have to be there to corroborate, to disagree, to do whatever in order to come to some reconciliation. So that's why.
Right.
But I understand I just wanted to put it out there, and I'm okay with
Yeah.
however it ends up.
Yeah, because then I think that, oftentimes if we are focusing on those that have not historically been focused on, it does feel uncomfortable, and also we don't do that, and so maybe we should, right?
Right.
So part of this is like reconstructing, reimagining, and so I understand that it makes you uncomfortable, but I think that that's probably the core task of the commission as well.
I mean, I think it's focusing on the group that doesn't have a voice.
Right.
So it's we're actually it's the people who've been excluded that we are trying to re-include in the first place.
Yeah.
But
I'm confused. Does that mean we're keeping BIPOC or not?
yes, we're keeping it. It's not changing. We're keeping it.
Okay, because that's like the whole point. So I would be very confused if we were too scared to say that this is the community that we're dealing with. That would blow my mind.
I think we should definitely keep BIPOC in there.
Okay, so we want to move to,
I mean, are we ready to move to agree on this? Are there more discussion? Like, what are we thinking?
I just want to say, I really appreciated Cliff's and everybody else's all of our thoughts on this and how we went through all these iterations just now, and that all of these are wonderful.
They're
And
really
I think all of us were thinking bigger, towards a mission statement. At least that's how I was thinking. And that I love that what we came up for now, for the strategic doing, but I love that we kind of have all these other ideas as well to work towards a longer vision, and goals and things like that we can flesh out later.
Okay, well, I mean, if we're ready to vote on this, I firmly believe that we all have to be in agreement. So if there's anyone that does not agree with this right now, I really value your opinion and I want to hear it. We have to go in as a united front on this. This can't be as simple, we're voting and one person gets left out.
it's a unanimous vote.
Yes, I just want to reiterate that. So are we ready to vote, or do we need to discuss more?
I would like to discuss more.
Okay, then please discuss. And will you, I'm sorry, put your microphone down.
Yeah. I definitely agree with including everybody in a lot more. And even when it comes down to religion, we have multiple different people with multiple different religions out there. And I feel like we will, with a bigger net, we will gather in a lot more people. And there's different things that can bring people in. And you don't know what some things, just like there's negative things that might trigger somebody, there's also some things that are not as negative to some, and that might pull them in as well. I'm just thinking,
What
You don't-
exactly is
I like it, but
what part is bothering you?
I'm not saying it's bothering me. I feel like,
I mean, you don't feel that they
Oh,
are not
are
included
you
under the
thinking, for
BIPOC
instance,
communities?
of
say again?
There was two people talking,
the-
so one.
I mean, BIPOC communities, is that not inclusive enough?
No, of course not. How do I say this? I don't know. It just doesn't.
Or is it under
gonna say-
the, well, just in
I
historical
was gonna
stuff?
say, are you thinking of so when you think of some folks of the Black or the African communities, is it because they associate with being Muslim as well, and that's also like a form of, obviously
I'm
Muslim
saying
people's,
Muslims,
like,
Christianity, all
oppression
of the
as well.
above. There's a lot of Christian black people out there, and I just look at things different. I feel like everybody, no matter what, should be included, and
Well, absolutely.
at the same
I mean,
time,
when
not
we-
trample on anybody else as well. That's not the idea at all.
Is this something though where like
That's not what's
How are we
happening though. Like,
trampling on people, or I'm
I just
really confused.
no, I said not.
Sorry.
It's not to trample on or anything like that. That's all.
What were you
that's
saying?
why I was like talking about earlier with like being very definitive of like this commission, which is based upon racism specifically, right?
Yes.
So I was saying like we could also with BIPOC folks get into the LGBTQ community. We could get into, of course, yes, religion. Like Muslim folks, like I was mentioning earlier, are very oppressed, and feminism and misogyny, all that stuff. But like, if we do that, then like we're not the Truth and Reconciliation Commission focusing on like racism. Like, so that's like we got to stick to our mission, which is why this is the whole reason why this came about. It's going to get really, like you say, you want to cast a wider net, but then we're not sticking to like why this like commission was formed. It's a different commission essentially, which is not a bad thing. Those are all things that we definitely need to take on. Like maybe we need commissions on like all these other things as well, right? Obviously we do. We need commissions on all sorts of stuff. That's why we have a human rights commission, I guess. But like, yeah, I would love to see what you're talking about also happen.
I guess
But in this case, that would be against the mission.
in terms of the number 5 that we're contemplating, would it be something that you could bring to any religious group? Right? I mean, the point is that this could apply, and it's not being exclusive, it's just being specific. So I kind of joked earlier about intersectionality, but I think that, if you're having a focus, you are generally going to probably also speak to people that are Muslim or Jewish or, Christian or Catholic or whatever. And we're just focusing on this one part, but that's not to say that that's all that we are.
Yeah.
So I think that it could speak to that. Like I could bring this to a religious group or my queer friends, my trans friends or whatever, who are of color, and say like, hey, this is us.
If I could build on that for a second, I mean, maybe this is the wrong example, but does this unintentionally exclude members of the Jewish community?
I don't see why would it.
Well, because they wouldn't be considered BIPOC.
I mean, some.
Yeah, they
might.
are.
Some might consider
can
them.
be.
But some, I'm just saying, but there'd be others who wouldn't fall into that would still consider themselves to be Jewish. That's all.
Well, that's their own experience then, right? Like that's how they see themselves. But like I know I have so many Jewish friends that don't consider themselves they consider themselves to be in the BIPOC community. So
Well,
there's so much anti-Semitism out there. I would agree that I think they would agree that they definitely fall into the BIPOC community.
I mean, our mission, we are tasked to help people that have lived experiences of racism. We can't define who has experienced racism, even if we disagree. So, I mean, if we need to change it to voices of people who have lived experiences of racism in their communities, maybe that would be better, to make sure we're not excluding anyone. But I was wondering if maybe, just to see if I'm thinking about this the right way, because we're not excluding anyone from the conversation, but we're being very specific about what the question is addressing. And I'm wondering if that's getting mixed or if I'm misunderstanding how you're taking it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking something that's a lot more universal, that's all.
Because it's universally, anyone can come to this conversation, but we are very singularly focused on the experience of people who have lived with racism. is what our commission is. So is that still excluding people?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's why it just doesn't sit with me. I don't know.
Does it help if we say people who have had lived experiences of racism?
I feel like that is a little bit more universal. Yes, I do.
And I am okay with that. How does everyone else feel? Because that is in line with what our mission is.
People who experience racism. I don't even know if you need to put lived, but.
Yes, however it should be.
Yeah, just shorten it to people who.
They might not know that they've lived it.
Yeah.
That's very true.
However would be the best way to say it, but would that be more agreeable or?
Universal is the key for me. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, then if it's universal, then why are we having this commission? I mean, tell me what your definition of racism is first, and then we can talk about like what universal means to me.
I don't think we have all night. I have a lot.
But
I've dealt with
what is the
racism a lot,
definition of
so
racism?
I think that would be a very long evening, and that's why I say something universal would be better, because everybody deals with it in different ways, and at the same time, we're trying to make sure we bring people together as much as we can, and excluding anybody in any way, to me, is counterproductive. That's all. It just will create some type of ripple effect that could be bad later on down the line. If we find something that is extremely universal, it will draw everybody in a lot easier. That's just personally how I feel.
But isn't BIPOC extremely universal? Like, isn't that inclusive of like all people of color?
That is definitely one
And
way.
that's what racism is, right? Like,
Say again?
it's racism is the oppression or marginalization of people based on like their particular like race or ethnic group, right? And so like they've been and like it's like white folks are on the other side of that equation, right? So I mean, like, we just have to be. This is truth, right? So we're trying to like figure out then like what is racism? Like if we got to go if we get to that point, like what is racism then? I mean, that's all I'm trying to say. Because if we're trying to go universal, I don't know. I don't understand when you say universal. Like it's like, well, then we're including everybody, but then how do the people that are experiencing the racism tell their truths if it's not being specific about the actual people that are experiencing the racism?
Is it possible that you're seeing it as we should be finding, since it should be universal, people who have been affected or lived through or have experienced, and but also including the people who have also committed those experiences should all live together to make this better? Is that what you're seeing?
That sounds a lot better to me.
Okay, so you're saying we should not take out the oppressor, or not, and the oppressor sounds stronger than I meant it.
Yeah.
I know that was a harsh word, but you're saying we can't move forward without including everyone.
Truth is truth, and I feel like the hard part is having those hard conversations, and not all of them are going to be ugly. So yes, I would say we need to make sure we include everybody's truth, so then we can hopefully sort things out and move in a better light.
So I think we wouldn't be able to say amplify the voices, because the dominant group has had a voice the entire time. So that kind of negates that.
No, but we're amplifying the voices of the BIPOC community. That's what
Yeah,
we are.
like I'm out then. Like I'm out.
That's
like,
what I'm
sorry.
saying. If we're
Because
including
we're not
everyone,
that's the whole point.
Not in that part. It's in the second, I would say by the second half, including everybody.
I mean, I guess we can still amplify the voices of those with lived experiences of racism. That's still amplifying their voices. It's not.
So we're amplifying the voices of people with lived experience of racism and the people who have perpetuated it. Is that what we're doing here? I'm totally confused.
I think that just to kind of,
Like,
I think to
How does this go?
to just sort of bring it back here. You know, I understand the desire to want to include more people. I think we start getting into this conversation of exclusion, inclusion, selective, however you want to say it. And I don't know who you're thinking of specifically, but I want to imagine that a commission that is charged with truth-telling, a commission that's charged with reconciliation, that you're going to center those that experience racism potentially before you get to the place where you're ready to embrace, dare I say, the oppressor, But I understand your desire to make sure that we're all included, and we're also living within a system that there is no space for that currently. There is no space to have this commission. So you're having to push super hard, and that may be uncomfortable, but it's also looking at a larger vision of how do we get there?
I would like to make it clear I'm not trying to bring out the voice of the oppressor in any way. I'm not trying to bring them forward. That seems like you guys are getting confused at what I'm saying, or maybe I'm just not coming across the right way. But
So
good to
do
go.
you want to add, make it more inclusive for the piece of maybe the healing or
Could I also-
restorative justice
Oh,
to kind of include
I know.
everyone?
I think I have. Are you talking about okay? So when I mentioned ethnicity earlier, something kind of pinged in my head. Because ethnicity can be different from race. I mean, it is different essentially, right? Ethnicity can involve culture, and religion. So maybe we have to add the word ethnicity in there.
I would also just, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I'd also
I don't know. I'm done with what I said.
I'd also just add in there too with that statement of all while addressing historical oppression. That can be a very that people can take that in and go different ways where they're like, well, I'm the oppressor, I want to address that, I'm this, they can also be, I didn't even know that I was the oppressor of this. So I do think you have it in there to include those maybe that don't identify as BIPOC. I see it in there as an invitation to explore with what you have currently.
I was thinking about those that are affected by, because we're all affected by it. On both sides of it, or all sides of it. So.
So what I had kind of changed it to is how can we strategically build capacity and amplify the voices of people who experience racism in order to express their truths, all while addressing historical oppression, racism, and the need to deconstruct colonial systems, ultimately creating foundations for safer spaces for healing and empowerment. So what we did was just changed it from BIPOC, which, that's kind of slang too. And I think that sometimes people do have a question. Myself personally, as somebody who's half Filipino, I'm like, am I included in that? I'm not really sure. Have I experienced racism? Yes, I have, So there's things that I think a lot more people could feel included in that.
Okay. Clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to do it.
Cliff, is that, you good?
sounds good.
And
Can
thank
you just
for
read the
bringing that
beginning
in.
again, please?
I'm gonna spray it over to you.
You got it, thank you.
Not to beat it on
Wait.
the head.
Just took BIPOC out.
We said people, lived experiences is what we.
With racism. Stephanie's working on it.
While she's fixing that, not to single you out, but I want to just make sure that you are comfortable with us moving forward with this, Commissioner.
Sure.
It doesn't sound like
sound convincing at all.
I think this is important enough to make sure that every single one of us is comfortable with it. Yeah. We have to be united.
And again, just to
That was
bring it back
easy
to the framing question, it's that careful dance of being really broad so that it can include ideas and assets and perspectives and people, but also staying focused on what are you doing with those ideas and assets and such. So this is really challenging, and I agree. If there are other pieces that people are uncomfortable with, let's flesh it out.
Mm-hmm.
I know it is late, and I know it's been a long day for everyone, but we all agreed to be here for important reasons, and I think it is important that we get this right. So and I'm freezing.
Me too.
I'm freezing, that's saying something.
Yeah.
So this is the new statement that has been, okay. I think Voices is up there twice.
I'm not okay with it, but I don't want people to freeze, so if it's just for the strategic doing, that's fine.
No, I mean, I'm okay with freezing. I'm okay with that. What are you not okay
No,
with?
it's cool. I mean, I don't know. I thought that being specific about, you know, people of color, Black, Indigenous, or just people of color, I will just say in general, like that was great. Because like that's the uncomfortableness that people have to deal with. Like it's really interesting that like people are uncomfortable with that, and like that to me makes me know that we're on the right track then. Because change is uncomfortable. And when people are scared to like say those things out loud, like even when I was asking like what is your definition of racism, people don't even want to say that, right? Because like then it's like this is all public, and like, you know, you might come out the wrong way, you might say something that's not right, and you might get canceled or whatever, right? But like that's not what we're here to do. Like we're here to like speak truth. And like I just, you know, I said this is the definition of racism. If we want, like if we need to, we can add like BIPOC and oppressed ethnic groups, you know, if we need to. But like I you know, I feel like when we put people who experience racism, well, that's opening like, you know, then a door where like maybe like, well, who's gonna well, then like there might be a lot of people that'll say, well, I experienced racism through somebody else, or I experienced racism because I'm a white person with empathy. Like I'm just saying, like how do we define that then? I'm just trying to like be an advocate for BIPOC people.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is why we're here. So I'm going to advocate for BIPOC people.
I think this is, I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Novus, and I think this is a important conversation because I don't think anyone's wrong. I think everyone is right. I can see value with anyone coming and expressing their experience of racism, even if I disagree with them in certain ways. I think that we are going to have a session where all different people are coming together with their lived experiences. And there are going to be white people at our meeting next week. And I
mean, I thought the point of the meeting next week was so that we could figure out how we are going to create platforms for BIPOC people to express their experiences with racism.
How does that negate?
So like I might have a complete misunderstanding then of like what this commission is for. So, and if that's the case, then
How does
I
it
apologize.
stop it? I'm confused.
I mean, I guess I still see that we will be focused on BIPOC people, but
I'm confused at how that stops us from.
But, I mean, I'm just one voice. I want to hear from everyone. I mean, like, I'm not saying anyone's wrong. Like,
well, because the definition of racism, right, is honestly like that is a BIPOC experience. Like that's it. There's no other way to define it. You cannot say there's anything. The reverse racism is a myth that doesn't exist, right? And so like honestly, like the very definition of racism is that which BIPOC people have experienced. So like this is why I'm confused. Like why are we scared of like defining this community?
There's absolutely no fear in this whatsoever. I just want to make that crystal clear. It's just about, I feel like making it easier for people to talk. That's that, and multiple different people to talk in order to find truths and solve those problems. That's all. But there's no fear. This fear thing that's crazy to me. That doesn't even make sense. We're sitting here in the mix. There's no fear.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is we're trying to build a platform to hear the truth of people, like BIPOC people that have experienced racism. So you have the word racism in here, right? Which is like definitely equated to folks that have experienced that who are BIPOC. So like it's like we're just kind of skipping over that for some reason, and I don't know why. And like, I guess that's where I'm like, so like, isn't that the, like, so, okay, let's go to the Canadian Commission again. It was, you know, specifically for Indigenous peoples to talk about like the harms done in boarding schools, right? The commission in Peru, or was it Peru? Or no, Ecuador?
Peru.
Yeah, was specifically for harms done during civil unrest or war, and people that were talking about that. Like apparently, like this commission was put together during the BLM uprising, and is built upon like trying to get to the heart of like racist oppression and like, you know, reconciliation through that. So I guess I don't understand then why we're not, like, why we wouldn't like specifically give a platform to the BIPOC community.
Okay, so I want to just kind of say, I think I look at this in two different pieces. When we're platforming voices of our BIPOC community, I feel like that's the time for white people to listen, not to talk about their experiences with racism, because that's not what that part is about. It's time for them to listen. Now, when we get into the reconciliation portion, definitely we want you know, voices at the table trying to come together, because the talking portion is giving voice to people who generally don't have a voice. White people have a voice generally in our white supremacist society. So the talking so I hope that makes sense, but maybe if we kind of tease out the two different portions, that might help.
I would also add, too, that this framing question is going to direct these Pathfinder projects, what could have very specific pieces to it, right? Where the language of BIPOC does come in front and center. I'm looking at the pieces for the Pathfinder projects for the underestimated, they had the underestimated mentorship program, right? That wasn't an all-inclusive, everybody and their mom. That was very specific. And then they had the mobile food vendors. It's for the vendors, right? This portal that's very much for vendors, not for all food policy folk, the vendors. And then Johnson County Business Education Series. You can have series on lots of things, but this is business education. So when you create this framing question and then you gather the people who, some of them are going to be the oppressors in the room, but also have access, right, and power, and are saying they have a willingness and want to elevate and be part of this, you guys are gonna create these Pathfinder projects that can be very specific, right? And I think that's where the action is gonna come. So in my opinion, you want them in the room because they're gonna have assets that we don't have. That is the invitation to them. And you'll be putting them to work through those Pathfinder projects.
Towards those specific goals.
Correct. So the framing question is broad, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, and it does allow for specific projects that have a very narrow focus for action. And that's what strategic is going to bring you all to do. Everyone that comes to that table, comes into that room, will be tasked with action to bring forth that Pathfinder project to completion.
So this has a broad enough scope that will allow for a more focused action.
Projects. Correct.
At least I see it that way.
And I think that, you know, there is opportunity kind of to Commissioner Krebs and also Commissioner Novus, you know, teasing those out, right? So the idea that, you know, people are going to be listening and people are going to be talking. And this is going to be about, you know, understanding where all this has come from, right? So there are those different pieces. And when we're in the strategic doing session, there's going to be opportunity to be like, okay, so which part is mine? And how can I help build that thing, right? So whether you have BIPOC people or you have people experiencing racism, like, you know, and I understand the desire to, like, you know, put things front and center. Again, it is not necessarily a mission statement. It's not something you have to wear on T-shirts. You know, I do want to say that it is, you know, it's there to help kind of propel things forward. So I don't want to get too lost in it, but I also am not trying to demean any of the conversation because I think it is very compelling.
That's the
Everybody's
goal.
saying.
I agree. To move forward, to move people forward and move them forward together as much as you can. That's all.
Yeah, and I want to say like thank you for that explanation. I don't tend to call like white folks oppressors because they're, you know, at this point many are not. I always say that like I'm not. It's not white folks that I'm mad at. It's white supremacy. So I want to make that very clear. And then also like if we do want to be specific about like, you know, the white connection though to like this larger, you know, colonial project, you know, we can call them settler descendants. You know, that's just a term that I use. But anyways, I do want to get back to this though. I do think that white folks are coming to this strategic doing to support BIPOC folks.
They're coming with their assets.
That's right.
Yeah.
So like if that's the case, then I don't see why we can't just still have BIPOC folks in there.
Can we put both BIPOC people or BIPOC and people who experience racism, have both of them in there?
I think that just confuses it. So whatever, it's fine. If this is just for the strategic doing, I'll vote on 5. But I'm voting with prejudice.
Okay. All right, like if, so you're okay with voting, you just don't like that one?
Yeah, and prejudice meaning obviously the other meaning of that term. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to hear what Marie thinks.
I'm okay with people who experience racism. I do understand. I feel like, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like are you kind of concerned with like the subtlety? Like you just want to straight up say it?
I mean, like, what's so weird about saying like white folks are coming to the strategic doing to like support BIPOC folks? So what's wrong with putting BIPOC folks who've experienced racism?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. But I mean, because like that's obviously what we're doing.
I'm comfortable with both. I'm questioning, will we have like maybe 5 minutes to explain who the TRC is?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we can like really like hammer that in that moment as well too. We've been discussing this for a while. What do we think we want to
I
do?
guess, would anybody object to having the BIPOC put back in there where the voices of BIPOC people?
I like it like this.
I kind of like it. I kind of like it like this as well. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that.
So then back to Scott, are you okay with it not having the BIPOC?
If we heavily just focus on what the TRC is, I think you're talking.
I'm having a hard time answering that because like we were having a problem with the word BIPOC earlier, and V did had a very good response to that, which I feel like we're missing right now. I don't know if you remember what you said earlier, V, to sorry, I don't know your name. The commissioner who just spoke.
Tassinari?
Said
Tassinari.
Yeah. So do you remember what you said earlier about that, V?
Being uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what I had said was just that, you know, it is uncomfortable because we don't necessarily tend to focus on BIPOC community. Mm-hmm. And so it brings up an uncomfortableness because we are. And, you know, that is, I think essentially what I was trying to boil it down to is that it's not something that is done often. And so it is the point of the commission in many ways. And the makeup of it, the spirit of it is, and I think that, you know, quite honestly, that is what we're going to run up against the most is uncomfortableness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, even amongst, look, I mean, you said it earlier, it's white supremacy and we're all drinking it. So it's going to, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel, you know, so like there's things that we're just going to have to continually, you know, bring up and say, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable, you know, so that we can get it out and we can talk about it as we have done here tonight. Yeah, so that's, I think, what I said about kind
Yeah,
of switching
and that was really great. And I just hope that people can like just really take that to heart right now and dig deep and like think about the term decolonization at this moment and understand that maybe like you need to like and I'm saying this to everybody in the room, like that you need to decolonize how you're thinking. And those feelings you're having, like understanding those feelings, like that those are feelings that are like basically I think entrenched in living in a colonial context. And so that's why I want to be specific, because I want to be like loud and proud about who we are. I'm not trying to be sheepish about it.
I'm still confused at where you get sheepish from with any of this.
So
I've said it time and again now.
I feel like it's giving this feeling of walking on eggshells, which we've done for hundreds of years. And I think maybe that's where it's kind of being triggering, softening things. Like, why are we softening things? Like, this is our time to speak, be bold, say what we need to say. So I understand what she's saying in that context. And I don't want to
that's
speak for
perfect.
her, but
No,
that's
you-
kind of
you-
where how I'm feeling it.
That was perfect. Thank you, Marie.
Yeah, I guess what I want to say is that I could be wrong, but this isn't about me feeling uncomfortable with this. This is about me looking at a statement and seeing the acronym and imagining other people seeing the acronym and saying, will there be a group of people who feel potentially excluded or uncomfortable with it? And if there will be, and they might be there at the meeting or might not be at the meeting, that's unfortunate. Now, maybe we have to do it, and it's okay if they don't show up and they feel uncomfortable. But if we can still achieve the goal without initially making them feel uncomfortable, because they're going to feel uncomfortable when they're in the meeting and confronted with all the issues, that's a better way to do it. That's really all I'm coming from with this. I just thought, when you look at the statement, that pops. And maybe it doesn't need to pop, and this is another way to say exactly the same thing and potentially be a bit more inclusive. But
Could you give an example of who would be excluded from BIPOC, or who, because I'm kind of struggling with that. I'm not understanding that.
okay, so the first thing, if you think about, the example I gave was Jewish community. Some people feel part of that acronym, some don't. If we think about,
But does it matter then the ones that don't feel they're part of it?
if you're looking at the statement, and the statement says, how can we strategically build capacity and amplify the voices of this particular group of people, you might be somebody who's experienced severe levels of racism, but don't identify with that group. Well, then you're automatically excluded a little bit.
Or it
That's
could
all.
just deter you away.
Yeah,
That's
just-
all. And the whole goal is to move this forward. I'd say I agree with that too.
So if you're someone who feels they've experienced racism and you want to help amplify the voices of other people who've experienced racism, that's great. Come on down.
That's why I said we could add BIPOC and oppressed ethnic groups earlier. Or we can also call it people of the world majority, which is actually the newest, most popular term right now, but it hasn't caught on with a lot of people yet. Because honestly, like white people make up the minority in this world. But anyways,
What about the BIPOC and the?
I'm feeling oppressed right now having to listen to this, so I'm just gonna stop and I'm gonna vote for this.
Well, I think it's okay what you said, the BIPOC and the
Oppressed.
ethnically oppressed.
Ethnically oppressed.
That seems pretty inclusive. Are we missing anyone else?
It's exceedingly inclusive. When you say like BIPOC and ethnically oppressed people, it's extremely inclusive.
I feel comfortable with that.
And I'm saying ethnically oppressed because, because ethnic can get into the weeds, but when we use ethnically oppressed, that's being very specific.
I mean, I think it's inclusive.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that too. I'm not feeling oppressed, I'm feeling browbeaten, but that's okay. I'll go along with it.
I often, when talking about like large groups of peoples like this, like I like capitalize people and put an S at the end. I pluralize it because we're talking about like a very large group of people.
Just the people, right? Not ethnically?
Yeah, no, just peoples like with a capital and an S. If I don't know if anybody's opposed to that, that's cool. But I just, yeah, that's just a small thing.
And this is self-identifying, so we're not policing anyone can identify with this if they choose to.
So as it would read, how can we strategically build capacity and amplify the voices of BIPOC people and people who are ethnically oppressed to express their truths?
Are you reading what?
Peoples, yeah, sorry. Ethnically oppressed peoples experience racism. Thank you.
Okay.
Peoples. I think then you don't need who experience racism, right?
We can get rid
Because
of that.
it's amplify the voices of BIPOC and ethnically oppressed peoples in order to, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Wait, that was kind of cool. Like, I mean, that is kind of cool to have in there because I feel like that's like, because when we say express their truths, right? We could be saying express your truths in all sorts of different ways. So, like, we are being specific about racism. So I think it's kind of cool to have that in there.
Well,
I
but
see.
the very
So
next thing
who-
says all while addressing historical oppression, racism.
And then, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't read far enough.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so I think we could take that out.
There we go.
There.
We're like, no, not the whole thing.
Okay. So,
Wait, is
are we good?
ethnically oppressed hyphenated?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a hyphen in between ethnically oppressed. Okay, we are here, it's to 9:50, like, I think we need to. Put the hyphen.
Okay.
So we start getting punchy. So.
I'm glad we went through the process though, because
Yeah.
this is feeling good.
But can I add another word though? I'm sorry. Like, so historical oppression, should we add genocide? Because indigenous peoples did experience genocide, which is like completely, off the charts.
Well, yeah, because
compared
other
to-
groups,
Yeah.
they
Not just
experience
that, yeah.
genocide
And
too.
many other groups many groups
Yeah.
have experienced genocide around the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of it. Yeah.
the only, we've been talking about, the only thing that's missing is, we're focusing on Johnson County. I don't know if that needs to be there, or that's fine. It doesn't, does it?
I think the focus should stay
Okay.
on Iowa, I think it should still stay on Iowa City.
Okay.
Can we just go with this for the strategic doing and we can talk about location later, or?
But location is Iowa City, Johnson County, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just making sure that when we get to we're not talking about the whole world. Yeah.
Well, I think when you had asked too about sharing with folks about the TRC, that gives that context.
That's the opportunity.
Awesome.
And yeah, to be clear, for the strategic doing, we'll send kind of like the, who's speaking kind of thing, because there is an opportunity for you as the chair, vice chair, or the whole commission to say something.
Awesome. Are we in agreement with this statement?
Madam Chair, I'm ready for the vote.
I agree. We do need to vote on this, right, Stephanie?
Yes.
Might as
Kind
well.
of up to-
Got here.
Okay, if there's no disagreement, then let's vote, please.
I just want to say I'm very sorry I pushed this so hard. I hope you can forgive me.
I think it's good though, because I think we did need to include that other information. So it's good we went through the process. It was rough, but this is what we do.
This is what we're here for.
Commissioner Kestner.
And I believe your collaboration is critically important, and it does push us to another level, and I don't think we should be ashamed about going to another level.
Don't have to
Exactly.
apologize.
Yes.
Let's vote.
Nice words.
Commissioner Tassinari,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Merritt,
Yes.
Commissioner Krebs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dillard,
Yes.
Commissioner Novus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, guys. Do we have to talk? We still have.
Got you, Larry.
I'm like, do you see like any of the other, like, I'm just thinking about like how hard we go here, and like, I'm really proud of this commission.
I agree.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to talk about with strategic doing? Because it is next week. I know.
Show up.
We'll email you.
Okay, please.
I would add just this piece, the Spanish-speaking one. I would just encourage, even if you don't speak Spanish, I would encourage you to consider attending those sessions. One, for the obvious reason, you're the commission, you're there, and it gives you an opportunity to, feel the way a lot of folks feel when they don't understand everything that's going on. So I just wanted to put that out there. Those dates I don't believe have been set yet, but just putting it on your radar.
Thank you. I'm going to move to public comment. If there's anyone online or in the audience that would like to speak on this, speak now.
Speak now for hold your peace.
Okay. And then we're going to move to facilitated work plan for phase 1, which is, thank you, Dr. Schooler, for waiting. Whatever you'd like to talk about, present.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it extremely short. I'm really grateful to have been able to listen to that conversation. And I'm actually here really just to flag the session that's coming 2 weeks after Strategic Doing, the fact-finding workshop that we're intending to hold. This is mostly repeat information that I shared when I was in town in August. But essentially, we want to be priming you all to consider some major questions, most of which have been emailed to you in a questionnaire so that we can get your thought bubbles going before the workshop itself. So I want to encourage you to look at that email from Laurel Cohen that should have arrived yesterday, and encourage you to take that questionnaire to help us prepare the workshop. But we sort of see us as facilitating a conversation that has 2 or 3 components. One is kind of a generalized discussion about defining fact-finding for this group, defining standards for something being considered factual. And then the other piece is going to be around the specifics of what topics we want to pursue, where we should look for information, how we should depict it, the context, and so on. There are all kinds of different topics that could illuminate racial injustice and discrimination. And so that's really what we want to settle on when we're with you there on the 27th. And so this is really the crux of it, and we just want to kind of keep this top of mind as you advance towards Strategic Doing and as we plan to return later in September. I mention all of this primarily because we're only going to be with you for one 4-hour or so session, one evening, and so it's a lot to accomplish, and that's why we want to have you do as much advanced thinking as you can, and that includes, reaching out to us for conversation. We've provided some slots to schedule for that. But we're looking forward very much to being able to help you all advance this piece of the puzzle that you have. So that's really all I have. Happy to take any questions, but great to be with you all.
Thank you. We'll be sure to get that information to you as soon as possible. Thanks. Another thing I wanted to bring up during this agenda is Eduardo emailed me wanting to propose 2 dates for Think Peace Mission. They're going to do a training on truth-telling, and they have suggested October 25th and October 26th. I just got this today, and I wanted to just put it on our radar. Please look in your calendar, see if this works out for you, and I'll coordinate with Stephanie to put an email out possibly to see if that works for everyone. Yes.
Just because we're on the facilitators work plan, the Native partners also will be doing their talking circle trainings. And so we were imagining those dates I don't have it in front of me. I'll have to send it again, but it's basically the Thursday night and then the Saturday.
That's when we decided that, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
last
already
time.
decided. I just wanted to remind everybody, we will be sending out invitations and working with Stephanie to get a press release and all that kind of stuff together too. But since we're talking about the work plan, just wanted to mention, it's going to be a busy couple months here.
Thank you.
I don't know if you got the information or if it was just kind of general, but 25th, 26th, are we thinking kind of night times again, like usual?
I'm assuming we can decide, but is that what day of the week is that?
Be a Wednesday and a Thursday.
These are proposed dates. I mean, we ultimately can say those dates don't work. I know nights are not the greatest for everyone on the commission, so we can always, just come back and talk about it. We're not going to have a formal TRC meeting this month after this because we have training. So let's use our emails to schedule that, please. I'm so sorry.
Just one more time, I promise.
The 25th.
So the
the
date for our presentation, for our halfway presentation to the city council, and I need to talk with Redmond about this, but I'm just trying to put it in context. All these trainings are coming, even the end of October, because we're trying to hit potentially, we have to do I think it's the second or fourth city council meeting. And so it'll have to be the first
meeting
in November. So that's kind of why everything feels pretty compressed and why I think piece is end of October. So
That is the first meeting in November.
It's a Tuesday, right?
I'm sorry, what's the actual date?
is it the 7th?
Yep. Whoever
Yeah.
said the 7th's correct.
And is elections in November?
Yes.
That is an election day, isn't it?
November. Yeah, that's true.
Tuesday.
Yeah, that's Tuesday.
So there's an election in November?
Yes, there is.
And does
The
the election involve any city council members?
Yes.
Look at, they may move that,
Yeah, there.
Can you,
that date, so we'll have to.
Oh, I'm sure.
do you have those out? You don't have those out? Oh, because you don't do that annually. The 6. Okay. Yeah, so I guess if we
I
could.
don't have the calendar.
I know, yeah, no, I know. So, yeah, I just wanted to flag that for you, that's what we're trying to hit. But I'd completely forgotten about the potential for that. Yeah, so thank you. We'll work with Redmond on
Yeah,
that.
I think the point is that they meet twice a month, and it's probably gonna be the early Tuesday, or if it's rearranged, because they have done that, rearranged it to go around election days, especially if it ends up on a Tuesday or something like that. So we'll just clarify what that is, but certainly feel that it's going to be the early part of November.
So the objective really is just the first meeting in November.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I don't think there's any other updates from facilitators. Any discussion on this agenda item? We'll move on to correspondence. I don't believe I've gotten any, so we'll finally move on to announcements from commissioners. First staff, is there any staff?
Just a reminder for everyone, when I send out the notice of meetings, if you could either accept or decline, so that the chair and vice chair and myself have a better idea of whether or not we're going to have a quorum, just to be respectful of everybody's time. Don't want to have folks coming up here at 7 p.m. if we're only going to have 3 or 4 in person. And so just being mindful of trying to hit that RSVP. And then this is more for all the community members who support the TRC. They're meeting next Thursday. The strategic doing that's being held on Thursday and Saturday will not be something that you'll be able to look or view on Zoom live. So if you're wanting to participate in those 2 sessions, those will be in person. So that is all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner announcements? If there's no announcements, I move to adjourn.
Oh, Sakaus.
Oh, Sakaus, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two announcements. One is that tickets are on sale for Truthsgiving, which is going to be held on November 10th this year at the Englert Theater. And Audio Pharmacy will be coming to play again, and they brought the house down last year. It was amazing. Native Harmony Drum Group will be coming from Sioux City, and Indigenous folks will be coming to speak, including myself and Commissioner Krebs. As well as Andre Wright, owner of Wright House of Fashion. And so if you want to go to the Englert Theater website and scroll to November 10th, you can get more information. And like tickets are like you can get a ticket for $5 if you want. And then we are making a lot of headway on Indigenous Peoples Day. It's the first Indigenous Peoples Day to be held here in Iowa City that's like actually being held by the city, so I'm very excited about that. And that's going to be, oh wait, Stephanie, what's the date for that?
It's
the 9th?
I believe it's October. Is
October
it the
9th,
4th or
right?
the 9th? It's the 9th, but it starts at 4, and I think it starts at 4 at Terry Trueblood
Yeah,
Recreational
yeah.
Center.
And thank you to the Human Rights Commission and to the Recreation Division. And is there anybody else to say thank you to?
I think you covered everyone.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, just want to put those out there because those are big deals for us here in Iowa City. We haven't, we haven't had those before. Well, Truthsgiving, but now IDP, it's kind of a big deal.
If there's no one, I move to adjourn.
I second.
Thank you.